Getting ready to go into the Roseville Area Middle School and kick off the Ask a Black Man event here. And looks like it's a rainy, dreary day, so hopefully that bodes well for the turnout. I'll be going live at about 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, so check us out then. And also be recording it, and it'll be live streamed not only on Facebook but on a few other venues. So, and I think I want to say that Nia Harris is going to be streaming this, or I don't know if it's going to be streamed live, but I'm going to do it on Facebook, but I think it will also be on public access TV as well. So hoping that there's lots of turnout and everybody can show up here. Again, that's 9 a.m. in about, I'd say little over 32 minutes, and be right inside this building here behind me. Well, that doesn't help, does it? All right, turn it around here. And so be a panel, myself, a couple other gentlemen, and see my good friend Rasheem Harris will be on the panel as well. And so come on out, check out the event if you can. You still got 30 minutes to get here, so plenty of time. We're at the Roseville Area Middle School, so come on by and be ready to ask some serious questions about race. The people on the panel are open to discussing issues of race relations, and we're in a part of our history in our country right now where it's about time we started talking about this stuff and trying to build some bridges. We got enough divisions out there, so today I think is about trying to help build a bridge of understanding. So hopefully you can come out. Again, it's in about 30 minutes at the Roseville Area Middle School in Roseville, Minnesota. I'll be going live again at that time or just before it. And my good friend Katie DeSell is going to handle the camera work because I'll be up on the panel with my friend Rasheem and some other guys. So, all right, hopefully you can come out. We'll see you in a few minutes. Peace.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out today to Ask the Black Man's Heart 2, the Black and White Conversation. I have two special treats for you today, actually. The first is Miss Marie Shante here, who is our spoken word artist, and she's going to start us off. And then we have Sejin Tao, he is the 2017 HRC essay winner, and he'll go at intermission time. But we're going to go ahead and start off with Miss Marie Shante. Can you please get a loud round of applause for her?
Good morning. Let's have, if you will, with me a conversation. Sit with your brother to the right or to the left of you, regardless of his culture, his race, his creed, his color. Sit and go beneath the surface, deep into what his fears and hopes are for his future. Get past your idiosyncrasies, your ways of living, your thoughts, your dynamics of what you think this life should be like. Ask him what his world is like when he sits perhaps at the dinner table with his wife and children to talk about how his day went, whether good or bad, happy or sad. Ask him what he thinks about this world right now, today. Post-Trump presidential reality. Ask him how he feels about the fact that we are still dealing with things from the 60s and the 50s and the 40s. Ask him why he feels sometimes that his fear is because the white man sitting to the right of him fears him, and the white man's fear is to not lose his culture or his way of life. Yeah. Ask him why he feels like he needs to hold on to how he was raised, even if how he was raised was beating the backs of other men. Ask him why he wants to hold on to that pain. Last night, I hoped to conjure the ancestors. It is my belief as a mother of 3 sons, 3 black sons, 3 strong-minded, strong-willed, and strong-backed black men, that I would get to the root of this. This conversation that no one really wants to have, because let's just be honest, don't nobody want to keep talking about this. This talk that we have all the time about race and what we're not doing and how you don't want to really lose what you have. No one wants to be honest about the fact that there is a thing called white privilege. No one wants to really talk about the injustices, the crimes committed, both by our people and your people getting off scot-free. No one wants to talk about that. But I urge you, I implore you, I believe that it will behoove you to really sit down and have this conversation. This real, raw, uncut, authentic conversation. Get to the root of it. Because if we are really going to live in the reality of the dream that Dr. King had, and we are going to raise our babies, our children, our grandbabies, our great-grandbabies, in a society where they can really love one another, regardless of their culture, creed, or color, then loved ones, we are going to need to sit and have the conversation. This deep-rooted, painful conversation that needs to go below the surface into our DNA to figure out what went wrong. How can we uproot it and get on with our lives so that we can live our lives post-conversation?
I thought we would go kind of down the line here and have everyone introduce themselves. Frank and Rasheen and Marty, I'll have you use the mic on that end, and then I'll hand you this mic here. Quick introduction for myself, I guess. I'm Naya Harris. I'm a wife, a mother, and a Roseville resident, and this is important to me. I just actually watched the video last night, and this kind of sums up what I'm doing, which is, it's time to tell the truth in America about race. So here we go.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out. My name is Mark Tinsley. I'm an art teacher at Central Park Elementary.
Morning, everybody. My name is Don Raleigh. I'm a small business owner here in Little Canada, and I've been a small business owner here for about 17 years.
Good morning. My name is Rick Sanders. I'm a Roseville resident, retired. That means I don't have to work. And I'm glad to be here today.
Hi, my name is Marty Owens. I live just over by Phelan in Maplewood, and I've got a family there with, I got 4 kids, 2 girls and 2 boys. I got most of them out of the house now, but looking forward to retirement and all that stuff as it comes down. But I'm here today because I believe what Naya is doing is a noble thing, and it's about time we started talking about this stuff.
My name is Shane Harris. I'm a good friend of Naya's.
That's my husband.
Twin Cities native, raised in Minneapolis, recent Roseville transplant. Been out here for about 3 years. A wife and 2 kids, and I guess I also believe in her cause, which is why I'm on the panel for the second time.
Hi, I'm Frank Strong, Roseville resident for 15 years, Minneapolis native before that, like Rasheen. Naya asked me to be on the panel. I'm happy to come here and talk to all of you, and it's an important cause, so thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Just really really quick, want to just go over some quick group norm stuff, also known as common sense, but we'll go over it anyway. Please silence your phones at this time if you would. That would be great. Also, before I was quoted by Star Tribune saying, be nice, which also means be respectful. Like, all of these guys are up here willing, unpaid, to...
You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, no, sorry, you did get some water. So, you know, willing to answer any question that you have and enjoying this really powerful, authentic conversation. Let's see. That's really kind of it. I want to just kind of jump right into it. We have 2 microphones in the aisle here for you guys to ask questions. I imagine, like before, no one has a question right off the bat, so I brought my own question. So, I just want to ask you guys, actually, let me ask, does anyone have a question that they want to start with? Okay, that's what I figured. That's all right. So, we're just going to jump right into it. What does white privilege mean? Starting with you, Mark.
It's the unseen, unspoken privilege to do things that should be, how can I say this, that should be afforded to all. A brief example of that, I've been watching the news. If you found out what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma with Officer Shelby, there's a lot of discussion about that. Some people say, well, she was doing her job, she was following procedure, it was an unarmed black man. She said she was feared for her life. And I say, she's a cop. On her belt, she has other tools other than a gun. She has less than lethal means to subdue a person. And that is just the tip of the iceberg of what white privilege represents to me.
So my answer is, white privilege to me is normal. I walk into a store, I'm not judged. I go to a gas station and I decide that I'm going to fill up my car without putting a credit card in the machine because I'm going to walk in and buy a bag of chips or a soda or something like that. I'm not scrutinized. I have the ability to go any place and do anything that I want. And I think what it comes down to, if we really look at it, is fear. Who fears who and who fears what? And it goes from both sides. Why do you fear me? And why do I fear you? And that's one of the reasons I'm on this panel, is I don't think white privilege is hidden. I think it is blatant in our society. And this will be a tough one, but I think we all should strive for it, because it means that we're all seen as normal in our society. And that's what I think this conversation should be about, is how do we stop having an us versus them versus having a we. And that's a very, very different conversation, and I hope we get to it.
White privilege to me, white privilege to me, I don't think about it that much because I don't have it. My life is judged as soon as I walk in a room by the color of my skin. People don't ask me who I am, what I am, or how I feel. They make a judgment first. With white privilege, you don't have that. You get to walk in a room and people accept you. They want to talk to you. They don't fear you.
Well, I thought a lot about white privilege since I was a kid and grew up with a civil rights worker. My mom did a lot of civil rights work in the South, so I saw the brutality of hatred firsthand and sort of the silent violence of apathy, if you understand what I mean by that. But I think it comes down to history for me. There's a dominant culture, and that happens to be wrapped up in race in our country. And so when we think about how that dominant culture behaves, it's been very, shall we say, oppressive and dismissive of people that are different in our country. And whether or not we want to admit that and come face to face with it, it exists. Every day it permeates our society, from the negative images that we see to the privileges we enjoy. And there's a whole history lesson on that, which I can't give in this short time, but I mean, I know you understand what redlining is, or many of you that lived through that understand what that is. Gentrification, things like that, and the more subtle, insidious, silent violence of apathy, which is what I think white people both enjoy in our country, and they're afraid simultaneously to face those things. And and it means a lot more than that to me, but that's part of it.
I think I can lead with it. It means a lot more than that to me too. More than I'm going to get to in a 2-minute soundbite. White privilege is the luxury of being able to say shit like we're in a post-racial society. You know, white privilege is the assumption of innocence, whereby I'm constantly under the oppression of the assumption of guilt, the assumption of the suspicion that I'm constantly viewed through. White privilege is being able to post on Facebook all day about your cats and about your vacation and ignore that Betty Shelby just murdered somebody and should be in jail because she's a coward. You can ignore that due to the luxury of white privilege, and I don't have that luxury. I don't get to not think about race every single day of my life because I have not been bestowed with white privilege. But again, I don't have a succinct 2-minute answer, but I guess that's one aspect of it.
Well, that's tough for me to follow up.
It's going to be like that all day, I'm sorry.
To me, white privilege, I enjoy all the benefits of our society, and I can ignore those that don't enjoy those same benefits. Just because of the color of my skin. I'm put in a position where if I need something, I can go to a bank and say, I want a loan, and they'll give it to me. It's incredibly easy for me to get along in life. My first job when I was 15, and I grew up in South Minneapolis in a rather poor neighborhood. My first job, several of the guys in the neighborhood applied for this job in a convenience store, and they were all black. I never applied for the job. I was in there buying snacks one day, and the manager said, "Hey Frank, are you 16 yet?" I said, "No, I'm 15. I'll be 16 in 2 months." He said, "That's close enough. You want a job?" That's not, that's not a level playing field. And white privilege means that I don't have to have a level playing field, and it's not right.
Thank you, guys. I have another question for you. Are there any places that you don't feel comfortable or safe traveling in the U.S.?
I could feel that.
To answer that question, I would say it would be the U.S. as a whole. I'm a product of the South during the 70s. My family was the first black family to move into an all-white neighborhood. And during the 70s in the Mid-South, you learn very quickly where you stand on the social spectrum. I have served in the military, I work for state governments, and I'm a proud teacher. And when I leave here, when I go out that door, all of that means nothing, despite the fact that I've spent the majority of my adult life helping others, teaching kids, protecting society. It is a barrage of microaggression acts where you have to look at people and they look you in the eye and they subconsciously change their purse to the other side. They'll cross the street, because you happen to represent that thug that they saw on TV the night before in some movie. Okay? So I really don't feel safe going anywhere, because to be a black man in this society with all that's going on, especially what Rashid said about Officer Shelby, is to have a target on your back. And in this country, I find it very, very ironic where I could walk down the street at night minding my own business or in my neighborhood, and the only thing that I have to worry about is a police officer. That, to me, tells me the state of this country.
There's no place I fear going, flat out. I joined the Army as well at 17 years old. I've seen vast swaths of it. My first assignment was in Washington, D.C., and to get thrown into the cultural mix that was there was very different. I was born in St. Paul. My parents moved to Osceola, Wisconsin, so I was raised in a very small town over in Wisconsin. And to get thrown into that culture was very different for me. And I was not raised in a systemically charged environment, meaning I didn't understand what diversity was because we didn't have any. It was me and a bunch of my friends, and we grew up together and joined the Army, and I've traveled around, and I've not seen this. I'm going to pick up on a couple things that you said. When I go out at night, I don't fear the police. In fact, if I see one, I wave at them, and sometimes I'll pull them over, and we'll have a conversation, and we'll say howdy, and
Sorry.
I just bought a house in St. Paul, and while I was looking around the neighborhood, it's down off of Sherburne Avenue, just a block off of the Green Line, and a police cruiser was coming by, and I waved at the cop and had him slow down, and he rolled down the window and goes, "Can I help you?" I said, "Howdy, I'm Don. I'm just buying a house here." He's like, "Oh, hey, that's great. What do you do?" So I told him I'm a business owner, and he's like, "Great. There's a couple of really good restaurants down here. This is where the guys hang out." I had a great conversation with him. That's my experience. So the question is, where do I fear going? I don't.
I don't really fear going places. I'm cautious when I'm in certain neighborhoods. I was a Navy brat, so growing up, I lived throughout the United States. I was born in Portsmouth, Virginia, a very segregated town. My dad, our first move was to, I think it was North Carolina, South Carolina. In fact, we lived in a house in South Carolina where a cross had been burnt in our front yard. You could still see the charred marks. From there, we went to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Now, living in Navy housing, you live in a whole different world. And even in the 50s, where they were just integrating the military, it was peaceful at times. There's that hidden racism, where people don't really say anything, but you can feel it. Now, I've also lived in Rhode Island, where in the north they say it's a very equal place. It's another one of those hidden places where it's not spoken, but it's felt. So to fear, I would say no, but the caution is there. I look around. I see how people are looking at me. If they do talk to me, I welcome them because they're trying to get to know me a little bit. And I think that's the biggest problem. Once we start talking and expressing our fears and our hopes, people understand that we're all the same.
Well, I guess it comes down to, for me, I'm not, it's hard to explain, I guess. Put it simply, I've got sort of a weird relationship with police. My grandfather was a policeman in St. Paul. My uncles were in the police force in St. Paul. But I didn't grow up here. I didn't have that culture. I grew up in the South for the most part. And the police I saw down there were sheriffs by day and Klansmen by night. And the behavior there was very interesting because you had the genteel South, gentlemanly sort of people that would come up and say, very nicely to you, "How are you today?" And they were very kind to my mom. But at night, different things would take place, including, rocks through windows and burning cars and spray painting bad stuff on the side of my mom's car and stuff. But anyway, let me put it this way. If you grow up like that, or if you're in sort of a unique situation where you get to experience what black people in America have to go through on a day-to-day basis. It'd be like this, trying to connect this to white folks out there. You ever buy a car and then you notice the car everywhere? You know, everybody's got a Plymouth Voyager because now you got a Plymouth Voyager. When you experience just a touch, you just dip your toe in the water of what black people experience on a daily basis. You start to see it everywhere. And I don't know what they call that, understanding, or I'm hesitant to say it's enlightenment, but you have a different view on the world. And as far as the police go, I have a more adversarial relationship with police, even though they don't care about me, they don't know me, I'm just some white dude in suburban neighborhood. But when I see things happen, I worry about our country and where we're headed, and I see the brutality, and I see what happens. And it's not just Officer Shelby. This has been going on for years and years and years and years. And now you see a camera or somebody on Facebook Live, but you knew in your heart, you were not going to believe that shit until it was put in your face. And now when it's in your face, there are still people that will deny it. Philando Castile, he must have done something wrong. He must have reached for a weapon because that's the only way that cop, probably, the assumption among white people is cops are out there doing a great job. And I think for the most part they are. They have a horrible, hard job to do. But for every time and every instance, and we have a police chief in the audience right now, for every instance that a police chief or somebody in charge or somebody in a position of power lets that go by, turns a blind eye to it, or is afraid to confront it, that behavior by their police force, it messes up the whole establishment. Because if you can't believe in that, then you cannot believe in justice. And if you don't believe in justice, you become hopeless. And if you become hopeless, that's where we are today, in my opinion, with a lot of people in the black community.
Hold on a second. Marty, where do you feel where do you not feel comfortable traveling? I missed that.
Well, I was recently down in Texas. I took a trip down in Texas, and I had no problem going down there. But I felt uncomfortable for whatever piece of blackness that I experienced in my life. I felt uncomfortable because I went from rural Kansas through Oklahoma, and then I started to see rebel flags on porches and pickup trucks and images that I don't see every day here in Minnesota. We're a lot more quiet about racism here. It exists, but we don't like to talk about it.
We're racist, but polite racist.
Well, it goes deeper than that, but we will build a freeway through your neighborhood. So, but right now I'd say, that brought me back to my youth as a child, growing up down in the South, in Mississippi, and Alabama, and places like that. And I thought to myself when I was down there, I was just nervous inside, just period. I just didn't want to have a confrontation. I didn't want to get pulled over. I didn't want to have a bad encounter with anybody. But, driving in the South still makes me a little nervous. And I'm a white guy. I'm just like, I'm not like my friend over here, Donald. I don't say, and maybe I should, but, hello, officer. I'm Marty. I always feel strange about that somehow.
Quick shout for mentioning the freeway through the neighborhood. I'm sure most of the room doesn't know what that's about with the Rock Hill community, but America hates me, and it has since its very inception, and I feel like it will for centuries to come. More succinctly, I don't mess with the South at all. I have no interest in traveling to the southeastern portion of America because I don't know why anybody who was black would be interested in a place where they still have disputes about integrated school dances now. Not in the 60s or in the 80s, now, in 2017. The South is still as racist as a place could possibly be, but let me get more on point. I don't like small towns or rural America at all. The majority of my family lives in Omaha, Nebraska. Small towns just inside of Nebraska. You go down, you head through Iowa to get there. It has been a long time fear of mine of having any sort of car trouble between here and Omaha. Because the last thing I want to do is be pulled over on the side of the road in rural Iowa and hoping that the sheriff shows up with an empathetic smile. In the pre-cell phone era, you have to keep in mind. I had to attend a wedding in Spring Grove, Minnesota, a couple years back. Another small town most of you probably haven't heard of near the southern border of Minnesota. Deathly afraid down there. I don't travel to small towns without bringing a handgun full of hollow point bullets, which can sound jarring, but I feel as though I've got to protect my family from whatever may befall them, and I just don't trust a lot of small towns. I've been ran out of small towns by multiple pickup trucks full of people trying to get me. This shit is real. And I'm down in a hotel in Spring Grove, a motel in Spring Grove, Minnesota. There wasn't no hotels. Looking out the window like a lunatic, making sure that everything's everything. I don't feel comfortable. I feel far more comfortable walking through the middle of North Minneapolis at 11:30 at night on a Saturday than I would walking down a county road in small town America. Infinitely more comfortable. I don't know. I could go on, but you get the gist.
I've traveled to all the contiguous 48 states, and there's not a place where I felt uncomfortable. I just have not. I don't have a target on my back, and I know if there's trouble and I were to call the police, they would show up and they would be on my side. That's what I've been taught since I was very small, and that's what I've experienced. Even when the cops show up and they shouldn't be on my side, they've been on my side. Back when I was a young man and we used to cause some trouble, the cops would show up. If there were people of color there, those were the people they focused on. In conclusion, there's not a place that I feel uncomfortable. I go to North Minneapolis on a regular basis. I have good friends who live there. It doesn't bother me. I've never been threatened there. And that's an extension of white privilege that we talked about before. I'm not the one that society is looking at and going, that's a trouble causer. We're going to come down on them. I've taken my children in places where people would say, that's a horrible neighborhood. Why would you take your children there? We were going to see people there. They needed to go there. And we were never threatened.
May I? Yeah, go ahead. I want to quickly point out that that uncomfortability shouldn't be limited to travel. I feel uncomfortable in jewelry stores. I feel uncomfortable in high-end electronic stores. I feel uncomfortable in a lot of settings. I'm unique among a lot of black people that I know in that I'm typically the only white person at my job, and it's been that way for 20, 25 years now. I'm sorry, black person. I'm taking a subject to him. Absolutely. But I've heard the comment plenty of times, man, how do you work around all the white folks? And it's because they know about the level of scrutiny that you encounter, the looks you encounter. Just yesterday, I was telling my friend Brian that I was on the way to work. I got in my building, and I was as close to the elevator as I am to Don here, right here. Couldn't have been more than 8 feet away. And a white lady turned and looked, a group of 3 of them, gave them getting in the elevator, and she turned and she looked at me like, and they got right in the elevator and tried to let the doors close on me. And it could just be being a jerk, but I had to wedge my hand in like Terminator 2 and force the thing open or whatnot just to get in the elevator. And I just stared at her the whole time going, good goddamn well, you saw me 5 feet from the elevator. But that level of constantly feeling like you're being judged, being held to a higher standard, stuff like that, the uncomfortability isn't only elsewhere. I think it's something that you live with to a certain degree, to a varying degree, in almost every environment that you enter.
I'm going to follow up with a question on that one. You just said the statement, being held to a higher standard. Yeah. What do you mean by that?
That's what it sounds like. I think that the benefit of the doubt is extended to white people more than it extended to me. It's like Marty said, where once you start to notice something like that, you start to see it everywhere, and it can be labeled externally as paranoia, or it could be a lived experience that I feel like I've run into at countless jobs or whatnot. Questioning an excuse as to why someone's not there. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of hard to articulate, but I do constantly feel like I've got to go. I feel like, to use a broader example, like Barack Obama had to go 130% to even get the credit for being at 100%. You know what I mean? I feel like I've got to do a little bit more to even get the credit for being where I'm at, because I feel as though I'm going to be scrutinized at a higher level at every given opportunity. I don't know, Rishi? Certainly.
So, and you're talking about being held to a higher standard. Even something as simple as a bag you carry. I carry a laptop bag when I go to work, and if I stop and go shopping on the way home or something, I carry it into the store with me because I won't leave my laptop in the car. I've never had anyone ask to check my bags, and I've seen people in front of me have their bags checked. I don't get checked, and that's being held to a lower standard. It really is. They're like, you're fine, go. And Rasheen, if he were walking to Best Buy, they would check his bag going in and going out. That's never happened to me, and I've seen it happen to others.
They check my bag because I'm with Rasheen.
True story.
I was going to say, being held to a higher standard. I remember growing up, having my parents and my grandparents always tell me, you're going to be judged different. You're going to have to do so much more than the white kids in your class. If they're getting B's, you need to get an A. When I worked for the city of Long Beach in California, I became a supervisor in 1985. I was the first black supervisor for the city of Long Beach for the gas department. That was outrageous. There should have been someone before me. I'm honored to have gotten that position. But to hold all those other people back because they couldn't do it, no, they could do it, and they were doing it. But I had to do 100% harder work, 100% more studying, because for me, I had to go home, try to eat dinner, and then go to school to prove to people that I was worthy of that job. I could work right beside another white guy, and they would look at me and say, you're doing something wrong. And that was done. So that higher standard, I think that's, in a way, it's a good thing, because it made me a stronger man. It made me work harder. It made me want to prove, not only to myself, but to others, that I could do it. And when I got that position, I still had people that were saying, well, you only got that position because they needed a black. They needed to fill that quota. They didn't think that I was spending time working hard away from my family for years, because trying to work rotating shifts, going to school, it took me longer, but I did give up.
I just wanted to add some commentary here, because we don't have a lot of time to visit this important topic, and I want to crash right through to the heart of it. Okay, so here's the thing, man. We have a crazy political environment right now that is dividing us in ways we never thought it would happen. Okay, so I'd like to mention a short story, and I told Naya and Rasheen this once, but as somebody who grew up in the South and saw the division and the people looking at people differently just based on the color of their skin, I just wanted to say this. Hatred finds its way in every culture. My wife is from Ireland. She's from Belfast, Northern Ireland, which has had its own troubles, as you know. And I've been over there several times with family. And the people that enjoy the same culture Irish culture. They live in the same city in Belfast. There is a wall through the city, and they draped it in a euphemism called the peace wall. You know, they do that now. They drape things in crazy euphemisms that mean the opposite of what they really are, like the freedom cage. But the point is, there's people that look, act, behave, and culturally share the exact same values, but they hate each other. And they're white, and they're Irish, and they hate each other. So human beings have a capacity to find that which divides us rather than that which unites us. And now in our political environment, we are being, I believe, and have been for a long time, manipulated to gravitate towards those divisions. And you know, I'll just tell you right now, I know what the number one weapon is in all of this, and it's not a secret. You know it yourself too if you search your heart. It is fear. It is fear. It is fear of your neighbor. It is fear of a black man. It is fear of a police officer. It is fear of the people you work with. And what is that fear driven from? Because you're constantly bombarded with the things that worry you and make you afraid. When I listen to Rasheem talk about the things that make him scared, and he can't even go into a jewelry store without feeling that. And you know what happens to fear. And this is why I try to counsel my young brother once in a while. Because fear leads to hatred. And hatred will get you nowhere in this life. It just makes you angry and makes things worse. So at some point, we have to overcome that. And I think it starts with standing up to the political environment and the environment that's bombarding us with division every day. And just reaching across the aisle and getting to know somebody. You mentioned earlier, you felt like, you almost feel like you're unnoticed, like you're invisible. And once working in the media, I interviewed a homeless man. I'll be done now in a second. I interviewed a homeless man, and he told me the hardest thing about homelessness wasn't sleeping on the street. It wasn't trying to find food every day. It wasn't panhandling. It wasn't being harassed by the police or people who were privileged. It was the invisibleness you feel. And I think a lot of people in our country right now feel invisible. Like they cannot reach out and do great things with their lives because of this feeling of disconnectedness. And I don't have a lot of answers, but I know it cannot start with fear. Somehow you have to take a 24-hour period, count all of the shit that's making you afraid, put it on a list, then take the next 24-hour period and count all the things you do out of love. And in the next 24-hour period after that, try to replace the things you've been doing with fear with love. And if you can do that, you can drop the mic in life. Because if you can gradually make that a habit, I think our world would be better. I got more to say, but I'm gonna pass.
This is great. This is not exactly how I envisioned. I thought people would have more questions, but this is great. This is great. We go with the flow. I actually wanted to chime in really quick if I could, since we're kind of telling stories. A couple weeks back, Jordan Edwards, a 15-year-old black child, was killed, and my heart just sank. Trying to do the right thing. Are you familiar with that story? Do you know what happened? For those of you who don't, he was a young black child who was leaving a house party. There was alcohol going on, and he thought he was doing the right thing by leaving, and he left, and unfortunately was killed by the police because the car was leaving the scene. I'm heartbroken by that. I don't know if anyone else is trying to switch my throat to
People do have questions.
I'm enraged. I'm not going to lie. I'm very enraged.
Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I'm just curious. Well, is this on?
Yeah. You got to get closer.
Okay. I work in the St. Paul School District, and I think one of the things people look at, or we've been looking at in the St. Paul School District, is young African American men getting suspended. And I'm starting to understand that, our schools are constructed by white men. We have white expectations. And there's a black culture that has different expectations in order to survive. So I'm just wondering if you guys have any ideas of how do I, as a white woman working in a school, help support our young African American men, so they don't become a statistic. So they're not being suspended, so they're being successful within our schools.
First of all, thank you for the question. Anybody have a problem with me answering? As a fellow teacher, I understand what you're talking about. You also, I believe, referring to the achievement gap. One of the things that I'm a firm believer in is that children have a tendency to look for an adult version of themselves. They want to get a glimpse into the possibilities of their future. So for a lot of our white children, a lot of our Asian children, a lot of for our Spanish children, they're able to see themselves reflected in the role of teacher by way of a teacher that corresponds to their culture. Also, another one, media. When you look at it, and I know this from a personal standpoint growing up, when you look in the media, if you look at it through the eyes of a black male child, see how they're represented in the media for the most part. And I will concede, yes, we had a black president, wonderful. We also have a wonderful scientist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, whom I absolutely love. Yay! He actually is fond of a quote that I have in all my emails from a white man, Horace Mann, that I firmly believe in, which is, be ashamed to die until you've won some small day. If you have the day off, I know how it is to teach you working all the time. I have a homework assignment for you. When you drive home, when you watch TV, when you look at the book, don't look at it through the lens of a white woman. Look at it through the lens of a black boy. See how you're represented in the media. As an art teacher, I teach this one format, hierarchical positioning, which says that the positions of power and authority are in the center, front, right, and the positions of inferiority are left, bottom, and behind. Look through all the pages, look at the programs, see during this assignment as a black boy how you were represented. See the possible future that you have. Possible thug, rap artist, football player, basketball player. Those are your options. Those are your options. No one at school looks like you. You go through history, you learn a Eurocentric culture. You're wondering, well, what about my people? Oh, well, we'll study that in February. Okay, black people were slaves, they helped build this country. Okay, back over here to Thomas Jefferson. So, that's where you are. You are looking for something to belong to. You are looking for something to aspire to. And that is all kids. We can break down EBD, we can break down everything, but in my 6 years of teaching, I can say with a certainty that all kids are looking to belong to something. If you ever watch those World War II movies where they have the satellites, the radars go round and round and round looking for something, that's our kids, especially our black kids. But just like those radars, when they find something, they lock on to it, they latch on to it, because they do not want to drown in the sea of indifference. So to answer your question, I would say first, be honest with yourself. Second of all, try. Try to include more artists, more scientists, more musicians, more historians that look like them. Okay, let them know that, yeah, although you might be presented with this narrow scope, there is so much more that you can do with this. And I'll let you know something. Starting off, you might make a mistake. That's okay. We're teachers. Every lesson plan that we taught probably didn't go the same way. So we keep doing till we get it right. Kids don't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care.
Can I chime in real quick? This is going to be a lot less Pollyanna than that. No disrespect, but I think that the whole narrative is false, and that you guys are talking about the effect and not the cause. I mean, we're talking about mopping up the floor instead of talking about why the ceiling's leaking. The reason that we have the achievement gap we have is a real dark, ugly scab that no one wants to peel back the bandage and talk about. There has been, since the inception of our country, since prior to the inception of our country, since the first black man was kidnapped and drugged over to America against his will, very intentional, systematic assault on the black family, going back to breaking up families as soon as they got over here, taking the men and breaking them down and putting them in the fields, taking the women, separating them to be raped in birthing machines, taking the children, separating them from their families to be sold off separately to different slave owners so they can start their own lineage of slaves, and going all the way through to, hey, you're free, but you're not free. And the head start that every other race in America got above black people cannot be oversold. That is central to the problem in education that we're having right now. The mass incarceration that was inflicted, that is inflicted on black households, the sheer abundance of unwed black mothers because all these black men are rotting in jail cells for having an ounce of weed 26 years ago is the reason that our children can't achieve. The constant bombardment and assault that black people in this country are under is the reason they can't achieve. The intentional funneling of black people into the poorest neighborhoods and the perpetual machine that keeps that going. And these poor neighborhoods have poorer housing that generate fewer taxes, which are used to pay for the schools. The schools are worse. I mean, talking about why Jamal ain't paying attention on Monday morning isn't addressing the issue. It's trying to put a band-aid on a bullet wound. And we're not going to get anywhere in that regard. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try. You do have a problem that's front and center, and you got to deal with it in some capacity. But the problem is way bigger than that. And it's way worse than anybody seems to want to acknowledge. And dealing with it on the tail end ain't going to get you anywhere. I don't know. You got a lot more to conquer there, a lot more to even admit to before you can start to approach closing the achievement gap. It ain't going to happen with just in-school activities. You got to look at the environment they're coming from. You got to look at the influences they're subject to. I don't know. There's a lot more to it than that.
What he said. As a teacher, I feel, number one, you're underpaid. To have to deal with what's going on in the classroom that's overcrowded and to try to engage with each pupil on a personal level is almost impossible for you to do. We do need to bring this to our school boards. You need smaller classrooms. You need more one-on-one time with our children. I can't speak as a teacher, but I can speak as a father who raised 2 boys. And for our family, my wife is sitting out there. We've been married for 41 years. Our boys are now 35 and 40. And we did the best we could. My wife homeschooled. Now, it's not for everyone, but we were able to give them that one-on-one attention. And you can't do that in a crowded classroom. As far as the suspension of black youth, yeah, there is a problem. Because if you look at it, the black student is going to be, once again, we're going to that, you have to do harder, you have to do more. They're going to be suspended for just about any little thing. And that's not right. They're in that room to learn. They're in there for education. And there may be some problem. Maybe Johnny didn't get breakfast. And with our political country, the way our political process is going right now, they may not get lunch either because we've got a president that wants to take the food out of their mouths. There is so much going on with our schools that need our help, our teachers' help, and our school board's help. And I bet if you go to a school board meeting, you're not going to find too many people sitting in there speaking their voice because they don't have the time. When I was growing up, my dad worked, my mom was able to stay home. We don't have that ability anymore just about every home, both parents are working just to pay the rent, just to pay those bills. And it's sad, but that's what they've got to do to keep their family together. I don't know, I don't have an answer for you other than I don't think you get paid enough for what you have to do. And like I said, it's just these kids are screaming out. When a child makes, I was not a quiet child in school. I was one of those kids that could go to school Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then I missed the rest of the week. But I was able to keep my grades up because I got bored. And that just might be one of the problems. Maybe some of these kids are bored. We have to challenge them. And then there are the ones that are getting left behind because people don't want to deal with it. If I've got 40 kids in the classroom and Billy can't read at that level, I can't catch him up. So, once again, the only thing I can think of is we have to speak out more as parents.
Okay, thank you.
We have one down here. So you talk about suspensions, and I think part of the problem is in school, a child is having a problem, and then he goes off to another class, and the first teacher tells the second teacher he's causing trouble, and that teacher is focused on him when he causes even a little bit of trouble. My wife is a teacher, and she comes home and tells me that she tries to break that cycle, and if she knows a child is having trouble throughout his classes and he acts up, she makes a point to not send him away immediately. Because when she sends him out of the classroom, he's learning. He's learning how to be in that classroom. He's learning the subject matter. And then when he goes to another class, the teacher's not doing that same thing, he's getting sent to the office immediately. We have to break that cycle within the school. But beyond that, what Rasheen said, this is a symptom, it's not the cause. And we need to work on that cause. Because all we're doing is flushing them through the school system. And yeah, I use the term flush because you put them in, you pull the lever in, toss them out, just like you would with the toilet. Because we're not enriching them, we're not expanding their minds, we're not respecting them. And that goes for most of our schools because these kids come in and they don't eat breakfast before they come because they don't have it. They don't have a safe place to go after school. If your needs aren't met before school, those kids aren't going to be able to focus on learning. And we, as a society, we need to make sure their needs are met before they get to the school door.
I do just want to clear up. St. Paul. Sorry. It's being recorded, so you got to be at the mic. Thank you. I just do want to put in that St. Paul School District, at least in other elementary schools, provide breakfast for every single child that comes to the I just want to make sure I put that in.
I know that.
Yeah.
And I do believe we had another question. Did you have a question?
Well, this conversation is going so well, I don't want to disrupt it with it.
I just different you weren't being ignored. So.
No, I don't feel ignored. I'll wait till this calms down and then I'll take it to a different tack.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, might not be too calm.
Well,
I'm just going to tell you right now.
Okay.
So I get the white privilege of hanging around with white folks and hearing their conversations without a black person present. And let's just talk about the elephant in the room right now. How come black folks don't take responsibility for their own selves? How come they don't pull themselves up by the bootstraps? How come their kids are coming to school misbehaving when my kid is polite and there to learn? And why is that happening? Why is that happening with black kids in our school system? Why are we so disruptive? Can't black folks find a way to control their kids like white folks do? With Ritalin and the fidget shit, you give the kids now the spinner. That's all you had with one here earlier, and my child has that too. My child has that because if I take away his iPad, he'll be on that. But let me just say this: it's hard to take responsibility when you are denied the opportunity. So to take responsibility, to have an earnest effort at that. Now look, I just be brief here. But America is an experiment, right? And it's broken right now. And whether we want to face it or not, the scab that Rasheem mentioned earlier, when you peel it back, it's a deep wound, And I know it's not popular among white folks, but really the only way to repair that wound is A, to face it, and B, to talk about reparations and what that means. And I know that's a scary word for some folks, but reparations would help heal those wounds. Now, how we approach that is a whole big issue, but I would encourage you also, because Rasheem mentioned it, and we'll have more to say on this later, but there's a couple of references out there for people that they need to check out. One is a book by Michelle Alexander called The New Jim Crow. And if you haven't read that book, you should pick it up and give it a read. It's not an indoctrination into black culture. It's a reality check for what's going on with the prison pipeline to prison. And check that book out. It's a good one. And there's a gentleman on Facebook. You look him up, please. His name is Max Parkus. He's a new abolitionist. I know you've heard of old abolitionists. You guys remember the old dude, Frederick Douglass? He had crazy hair. Well, there's some new people out there that are abolitionists. And they're abolitionists because the prison to pipeline is a form of modern-day slavery. And I just wanted to mention that quick, and I'll let this nice lady ask her question.
Let me, super brief, but as it pertains to the original topic that was brought up about schooling, without stating the obvious, because I know it's not obvious to some of y'all, when you start suspending these kids, these young black kids who come from a host of systemic problems, more or less thrust upon them, and he's suspended, and then he's labeled as a troubled kid, and then by the time he's 14, 15, he's just kind of done with school altogether, and then he has to start finding a way to work, but you didn't graduate, and then you start selling drugs, you start stealing TVs, and then you're part of this prison system that is absolutely, without a doubt and without exaggeration, a form of modern-day slavery. It's all tied together, and you can't talk about one aspect without touching on the rest of it. I don't want to dive too far into the prison thing, but that's a whole other 15 minutes right there. You got a question?
You're going to go here. Which way do you want to go?
We'll go.
Okay. So I'm going to take this a little different way, because when you all were talking about needing to be 130% in order to be, I think every woman in this room recognized that as an element of our shared experience. And yet, throughout history, the women's movement and the civil rights movement have competed over who gets to go first. And I think there are actually forces out there, and part of them are the ones that help white women fear black men. You know, that's a systemic piece that have prevented our needs and our movements from joining the force. And how do we get beyond that? And mansplaining means, which is something that we live with all the time, being told what we should understand by white men who think they know more than we do about what we're experiencing. So, I'll just sit down back here.
So I'll start with this one. I work for a woman-owned business. My wife actually is the CEO. And we've talked about the differences between the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement and the various ways that you can get a particular ideology ahead. I'm going to compare and contrast two different types of ideas. The first idea is one of protest. Black Lives Matter. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that that's true. Now, the organization Black Lives Matter, when you bring it up in your mind, do you see it as a nurturing organization or do you see it as a protest organization? Yeah, and that frame of reference is the way that we measure that particular organization. For me, when I think of Black Lives Matter, I think of riots, I think of stones being thrown at police, I think of cities being shut down, I think of newscasters who start off the conversation with a peaceful protest, today turned into, and then follow on with the rest of that. They always try to say a peaceful protest. Now, the narrative there is that Black Lives Matters as an organizational institution is a protesting organization. Now, compare and contrast that with the National Association of Women Business Owners, or NAWBO. NAWA's 2017 convention is going to actually be here in Minneapolis. And the National Association of Women Business Owners, I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it is an organization of nurturing. What they do is they mentor women that are thinking about being entrepreneurs. They mentor women to understand how finances work, how big businesses actually become, or small businesses become big businesses. And they just had a Hall of Fame event where they took many, there was, I believe, 8 women who were honored for their entrepreneurial spirit here in Minnesota. The CEO of the Ken Davis Barbecue Company was one of those that was honored. And she talked about how she had to take over from her husband this organization and the things that she had to learn along the way. And it was very specific along that glass ceiling, with the achievement gap, the way that she had to be better than everybody else. In fact, it was really interesting. She said, I had to be 110% better. The reason was the expectations of who she was as a person was different than who she saw herself as. And so get involved. To answer your question, how do we solve this? I would suggest getting involved in organizations that are nurturing in nature as opposed to protesting in nature.
I got to jump in next. I'm sorry. That's a bunch of BS. And I'm not trying to attack you as a person, but it's hard to listen to that, quite honestly. And this is with all due respect to the women's movement. It is imperative that women have the same rights as men. It's a different conversation, but I believe that with every ounce of my being. I have 2 daughters that I'm raising who are only 5 and 7, and I'll be good. I'm not going to allow them to be denied anything. They deserve everything the world has coming to them. But Black Lives Matter has been smeared and intentionally demonized in this country because Black lives don't matter. The reason the organization exists is because Black lives don't matter, and they never have from the first one that was kidnapped, chained, and drugged over here against his will. Black Lives Matter is an explosive movement because we shall overcome it working. Black Lives Matter is blocking the freeway because sitting around and waiting for the verdict to come back as guilty ain't been working. Black Lives Matter has to get in your face to get on the first story of the news so that some of y'all will please and finally pay some attention to what we're trying to say is going on, because an abundance of white people still want to look at you like you're crazy when you tell them some shit's racist. They want to look at you like you're tripping, like you're just being sensitive when you tell them about the horrible cloud of oppression that hangs over every single aspect of your life. That's the reason that the freeways are getting blocked. That's the reason why they're getting arrested in droves. It's super convenient to forget how many times Martin Luther King was clumped in the head and drugged off to jail. It's super convenient to forget that Rosa Parks was drugged off that bus and thrown in jail. It's super convenient to act like the protests that were going on in the 60s were all peaceful. Like they was just hanging out, waiting for some rights to be politely bestowed upon them. That's not how this works. It's never been how this works. Sure, and it's the whole Pollyanna pie in the sky stuff to say they should just organize and they should get some business efforts and they should talk to their legislature. Do you really think that's going to be effective?
No, but
hold up. That question's rhetorical. I'm trying to stay as professional as possible. You heard me, I had to use my high voice just now. But I'm not going to sit here in this forum and listen to Black Lives Matter being demeaned, because Black lives haven't mattered. And I'm going to scream from the mountaintops every chance I get and be as disruptive as possible until the people that ain't listening start listening, because it's necessary. It ain't going to work any other way. You keep telling people, not you obviously as an individual, but the establishment keeps telling people, let's have some calm, and let's let the system play out, and let's wait for the results. But we know how that movie ends. We done seen that movie 5 times, and I know how chapter 6 is going to end. That cop's going to get found not guilty 9.5 times out of 10. And the time they do get found guilty, it's going to be a slap on the wrist. So we need an explosive and in-your-face and impossible to ignore movement. And that's what is taking place right now. It couldn't be more necessary, and I applaud their efforts 1,000%.
Certainly. So what I want to go back to, the idea that I said was the media portrays it this way. And what is the difference in your mind? Because I'm not saying that any movement is better or worse than another. What I'm saying is the way that it's being pushed to us in the media is really different than what the core of Black Lives Matter is trying to do. And what we're being fed as a society through mainstream media is what is dictating the narrative to the rest of America. How do you change that conversation?
Well, right here, but let me answer this quick, Rasheem. I have to respond because that portrayal goes against your experiences. And a lot of those portrayals go against your actual factual experiences when you actually interact with these people. Donald, you mentioned some of the business dealings. There is no Hall of Fame for protest. There is no Hall of Fame for civil disobedience. And if you don't know about this, at the state legislature this year, they passed a law further strengthening the criminalization of standing on a freeway or blocking a airport. Now, I don't know if you know about this or not, but they call these things freedom zones. These places where should there be a zone for freedom in America? Right? From sea to shining sea, you grew up being taught that, right? And yet, there isn't that place. So, this is what I like to tell my friends who ask me about the Black Lives Matter protest. White people in this country are lucky there's not an armed revolution. Because if white folks were being treated the way black folks were being treated in this country for 350 years, there would be a revolution. There was a revolution. It was called the American Revolution, and that's because we paid too much taxes, right? We didn't want old King George to come down and bother us. We were, people are getting killed in the street today. So for every life that's lost, and I can name all the names, Tamir Wright, make me go down the list, but right now I would tell you that if I was black in this country, I'm not even black, and I'm sympathetic to it, I would be out in the street every single day, because what do Rasheem's children have to look forward to if they can live in a country where justice isn't served? So Black Lives Matter is a tepid movement. My mother used to send out leaflets and flyers and letters supporting the Black Panther movement. And the reason she did that was because, if you don't know this, the Black Panthers introduced the school lunch program in Chicago. Okay? Bobby Seale. Right? Okay, so when the FBI came to visit us and told my mom she was colluding with terrorists, because black people grabbed some guns and stood and looked mean at different various venues. White folks got real scared. I just want to say this. The Black Lives Movement is mild-mannered compared to the feelings that a lot of black people are struggling with today. And when they're confronted by the injustices that they are today, I think the least we can do is be somewhat sympathetic to it. And although, Donald, I understand your perspective, I do, and I know what you're asking for. You want something nurturing rather than confrontational. We're way past that. We're way past that in this country. That is all.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you,
So,
Marty.
please let her ask her question.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. We're going to go to Marie Fontaine here. Go ahead.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I have two statements that will maybe lead to a question. I don't know. I want to take it back a little further to the teacher's question in regards to how she can help the African American young men in school and bring light to. I'm glad someone mentioned a prison to school pipeline system, because what that is a system that starts to research and document black and brown children, boys specifically, as young as kindergarten and the second grade, to say if they are not able to read at grade level by then they'll go to prison. Right. So instead of investing money into their education, they invest the money into a prison cell. I believe as a mom of 3 sons, like I said in my piece, if you are going to help our children, my son, invest in his education. When I send him to school after I've fed him breakfast, please don't assume that because he's coming from a single mother's household that he's not eating breakfast, or that his clothes are not clean, or that he won't be fed or loved or nurtured when he gets home. Please don't assume that because he's fidgety and he's a natural born musician that in the second grade you can send him to the R&R class during reading time or math time, and that he'll be able to catch up again. What they do is they take the kids out of the classroom, send them out of the classrooms during their core curriculum so they can go somewhere else. And then they write this pipeline, this paper chart. And students are not listed as students anymore. On this paper, these write-ups, they're listed as offenders. In the kindergarten, in second grade, you're labeling a student as an offender. And you're using rhetoric and language like insubordinate to authority and disruptive and things that you would use toward a criminal. So it starts there. And then you still have this thing, like Marty mentioned, the KKK. But you're concerned, Donald, about Black Lives Matter not being nurtured when they're not nurturing Black lives. So if you want us, Black lives, to be nurturing, then you nurture us. You start in the deep-rooted systematic system that has done everything to dismantle what we are trying to bring together. However, the KKK still exists. These people who are going to help the Black lives, the children, the Black children, are still incarcerated. And speaking of laws being passed, it is now okay to criminalize and incarcerate a child as young as 10 years old and charge them as an adult. So when you have these type of discussions and you think about changing what you can do to help someone out, specifically an African American boy, you have to get beyond the surface. You can't assume that every child is the same or every child's circumstance is the same. And you can't assume that everything is cookie cut and everything will work for everybody. You have to really focus on the person, the individual, and the constructs that are set up to fail these people, these kids, these babies, so that as adults, we can all collectively come together and say, we're still just touching the surface. We want everything to be nice. We want you to not be aggressive. We'd rather you be passionate but passive. That doesn't work. You're not going to get one or the other. You're either going to take my pain and acknowledge it and say that I have a right to be aggressive and explosive and honor that and try to be empathetic about it without trying to whitewash it and say, yeah, well, just calm down a little bit. It doesn't work that way. You can't have a second grader listed as an offender and have this paper trail follow him until he's 16, and then he sits in the guidance counselor's office and she tells him, you know, you can't really drop out at the age of 16. It's no longer a law for you to go to school. Because that's what they're doing.
I want to add something to that real quick. As a former prison guard, you're right, and the problem is much, much worse. Right now, there's statisticians who actually take the write-ups that are done on kids, and they can come up with a projection of how many bunk beds they need to add to their prison. After hearing that, I said, I'm going to do my absolute best not to write up anyone, because I'm not going to contribute to that. Someone who used to lock up people, especially a lot of black people, I had a moment of cognitive dissonance because I was adding to the problem. And a lot of it right now, especially with privatized prisons, no one's really talked about that, but privatized prisons, in my opinion, are horrible. If my numbers are correct, I think I read somewhere that there are more people locked up, more black people locked up right now in privatized prisons than were enslaved. That's where we are right now. And what privatized prison is security on a budget. All right? So, and I agree with you about helping our black kids, especially with after-school programs, because I actually did a study a while back, and the numbers have changed, but the ratio is pretty much the same. For every dollar that you spend on an after-school program to help a kid, you save $30 to incarcerate them, so they will not be incarcerated. So when you have that big of a savings, why are we not having more after-school programs? Why are we taking away from our kids and their futures by doing that?
But we know why. There ain't no mystery as to why. We know exactly why.
That's right.
We got to talk about the nefarious nature of some of that stuff. We can't dance around it.
It's in the B, it's in billions of dollars that's spent on the system right now. And the criminal justice system, which I'm sure the police chief is very well aware of, is struggling with this now. I mean, and it needs to be more widely reported and talked about.
All right. Well, on that note, we are going to take a quick, brief intermission. Oh, I'm sorry. No. You're
White
good.
thing?
And a little white man card here.
Yeah, white heterosexual man. Can't ask a question here.
You're joking?
What's that?
Just say you're joking, because some people will think you're serious. As much as you're laughing.
All right. There was a privilege in the dictionary is not preceded by the word white. So, but since we did that, and you did that, and that's fine, because it's germane to the discussion that can be argued. So my question is, if we proceed the word privilege, you get to pick one, and you can expound on it if you want, but you get to pick one. The word privilege, is it equality of opportunity or equality of outcomes? Which one?
Privilege is neither of those. Privilege is not equality.
Sir, Frank, I said to pick one. That's my as an audience member that came here today, that's my standard. Because there's been a lot of discussion stuff, and there's a lot of stuff thrown out. Valid, invalid, standards, not standards, whatever. But my standard as a participant in this is you get to pick one. So if you can't, then just say I will not pick.
I won't pick one of those options because those options are not what privilege is.
Could you restate the two options real quick?
And privilege isn't white, black, red, yellow, or brown either. It's privilege.
Could you restate the specific question?
The specific question is this. I prefaced it by saying privilege is not preceded by the word white. So, if privilege on its own is preceded by something, pick one. Equality of opportunity or equality of outcomes. Which one? Or equality of outcome. Which one?
I guess I'm not understanding what you mean by proceeded by, because privilege is advantage. It's not equality. Whether it's white, whether it's male, whether it's whatever.
Right. Yep, I got it. So I'll start and then you guys will shoot me down. I think what you're asking is, what is privilege? And from my understanding of it, especially in light of the way that you asked the question, it is opportunity. Because I'm granted the opportunity to do things because of my privilege. I have the ability, it was mentioned before, I can walk into a bank and be looked at as a good candidate, and then I have to fill out paperwork, which is the outcome. I can walk into the jewelry store and be seen as a good customer, and then the outcome comes down to, can I fill out can I give a credit card that's got enough money on it, or can I fill out a credit request that I've got enough in my history that I can actually get that piece of jewelry. Same thing with walking into a car dealership or anything else. To me, the privilege, whatever the prefix is to that, means I have the opportunity to participate in that activity because of, well, whether who I am or what I'm doing. Sometimes I've got privilege because I'm a male. Sometimes I've got privilege because I'm a father. Sometimes I've got privilege because I'm a small business owner. I get to get into things that others can't. And that's my opportunity to participate. The outcome is left up to me. And that comes down to training, and it comes down a lot to what our society will allow us to accept.
So, I know we're going to take a little short intermission here, but I just want to say one thing about that. So there are some things that transcend your indignation or your uncomfortableness with white privilege. And one of those things is open your mind. If you free your mind, your ass will follow. And part of the things is accepting the fact that you do have white privilege. You said white privilege doesn't exist. It damn sure does exist. We see it every day. And if you only open your eyes to see it, well, I heard you say it didn't exist. All right, well, that's what I heard. Oh, that's my professor. I better be cool.
I'm going to end this. Privilege. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
You said outcome. I would say I don't agree with either one of those statements, but I'm going to choose outcome because I have the privilege of going to that same bank, filling out that same loan, and getting a higher rate because I'm black. I also have the privilege of going into that store and filling out a loan and then being turned down, even though I probably have more than enough income to pay for what I was going to buy or get that loan because I'm black. So if it's outcome, yeah, we can all have some kind of outcome from the word privilege. But the outcome that we get is still determined by the color of our skin.
To suggest the notion, and I'm not specifically saying this was your exact point, but to suggest the notion that there isn't any white privilege in America would be either being willfully ignorant or just intentionally ignorant. Wells Fargo, second or third largest bank in America, just got busted last week for intentionally and over a pretty long stretch of time being found guilty of giving black people applying for loans higher interest rates for the exact same credit scores as their white counterparts. I got a cousin whose name is Kamal, is not here today, who is a very skilled computer operator, computer technician, computer analyst or whatnot. And he couldn't get his application reviewed anywhere he submitted it to. So he tried to apply to the same couple of jobs, and instead of writing Kamal, he wrote Michael as his name. And boom, phone started ringing. Because wasn't nobody calling back Kamal. But don't call Michael. He might be white. You know what I mean? Privilege manifests itself in so many aspects in America that it's farcical to suggest that it's not a genuine concept that intrudes every aspect of society. I don't know how any intelligent person could honestly and legitimately argue that concept or that notion is false. That sounds silly to me. You know better than that. If you want to admit it here in public or not, you know better than that. And come on, stop it.
We're going to go to this question here. You had a question, and then we're going to go to a quick intermission. No, we will.
Hi, it's not a question, and I'm not a professor any longer. I'm getting my teacher's license.
I still love it.
Thank you. Thanks. It's been great having Marty in the class. And I don't have students like Marty anymore. So I think one of the things I wanted to say is not so much about whether there is white privilege and has to be marked as that, and that it exists is there. But then something else that doesn't get talked about is a kind of multiculturalism. A kind of multiculturalism for which I'm the face of that. I think that needs to be talked about. Because I think there's a context in which capitalism loves this kind of self-serving, identitarian talk about multiculturalism. That has done a lot of damage. Has done a lot of damage to movements like a completely legitimate movement like Black Lives Matter or something. So we can be successful. So I think there's something that it has to do with class, and it's become very popular for people of the same race to have contempt for the poor of the same race. And I think that is something that I think there is room here for there to be a conversation about this, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Give yourself a round of applause. So, just one quick note before we take this intermission that this is why the conversation is necessary. You hear the passion, right? You hear the passion in people's voices. This is why the conversation is necessary. let's try to move forward, okay? We're going to take a quick intermission, about 15 minutes, and we'll come back, and Sejin Hall will be reading his essay. Thanks, guys.
I'd like to introduce the second treat of the day, Sejin Hall. He's an 8th grader here at Graham, and he's the 2017 Human Rights Commission winner for this year for his essay that he wrote. So let's give him a round of applause. With that said, I'll let you go ahead, okay?
First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here and taking time to listen to me. Each and every one of us is a prejudice. We are human beings, and as a member of this race, we have feelings and beliefs. Prejudice exists because we all have implicit biases. Implicit biases is the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. These biases, which encompass both favorable and unfavorable assessments, are activated involuntarily and without an individual's awareness or intent control. We prejudge others based on our own experience with people, or maybe not having any experiences. And based on information we learn from society, stereotyping happens when we lump an entire group of people together and assign characteristics to everyone who might belong to that particular group. Those stereotypes shape the way we look at others and how we interact with others. This can be very damaging because having prejudice, biases, and using stereotypes can lead to bad ways to keep certain people down. Human rights means that every human being has the right to freedom, justice, and peace, no matter your race, class, gender, national origin, and etc. We all know that these are great ideas, but do we really all have these rights? It was a warm autumn afternoon with my friends, when my friends and I had just finished football practice at school. Some of the guys were planning to walk to McDonald's to get some food and then walk home. They invited me to go with them. McDonald's is about a half a block away from our school, and kids oftentimes walk there to hang out after school. Sometimes when my mom would pick me up, we would see kids walking there. My mom would comment that I was not allowed to go hang out at McDonald's for safety reasons. But this one particular day, I really wanted to go with some of my teammates. So I called my mom, hoping that she would allow me to go. While on the phone, she asked me, "How many of your football friends that will be going are black?" And I responded, "There's about 5 of us and all of us are black. Why does it matter?" Then she said, "I don't feel comfortable with you walking up to McDonald's with a group of black boys." I was very surprised at my mom's answer and thought it was a weird comment, and that she was being unreasonable because I'm black myself. She went on to explain that with all the police shootings that have been going on with black boys and black men, and especially because of the shooting of Philando Castile happened so close to our home, she did not want me to be next. I assured my mom that something like that wouldn't happen to me, but she went on to explain, "We're in a predominantly white neighborhood, and people are prejudiced and will stereotype you if a group of black boys are walking down the street. That's just how our society thinks. They don't care if you just finished football practice and are walking to McDonald's for a snack. They will look at you and prejudge you. All it takes is for one person to feel like you are a threat, and they could call the police, and before you know it, one word will lead to another, and then there's violence. So no, you cannot go." I was really mad that I could not go to McDonald's with my friends. I thought my mom was crazy and overworrying for thinking that way. Later on that night, when my mom got home from work, she wanted to talk about this some more with me. We talked for a long time about prejudice and stereotypes, and how it's very unfortunate that I will have to filter everything that I do because of other people's perceptions of me. She asked me if I remembered what I said the day that Philando Castile was shot. I did. I was in shock and stated, "I don't want to grow up to be a black man." I will never forget how scared I felt that day because I thought that could be me. She said that I could be intelligent, be kind to others, and be active in school activities, but that people will always see me as a black male first. And with that comes a lot of stereotypes. That means that I will need to be extra careful each time I leave my house because of people's prejudice, biases, and racist mind frames. She called this the talk that all of parents had to have with their black sons. I shared this story because I don't feel like I have all the rights that I read in the Declaration of Human Rights. Knowing that these rights should be given to every human being, and knowing that they actually aren't being practiced equally to everyone worries me. The most relevant articles in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that pertain to my situation are Articles 2. Everyone is entitled to the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political, or other option, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. With all the things going on in our society and in my own experience, I don't feel like I have the rights and freedoms if I can't even walk to McDonald's with my friends because of how others might see or think of me. Article 11. We're always innocent until proven guilty. Nobody should be blamed for doing something until it is proven. When people say we did a bad thing, we have the right to show that it's not true. In this case, are people really given fair chances to prove that they are innocent? It seems like we black boys are always guilty first and have to prove our innocence. Article 13. Freedom to move. We all have the right to go wherever we want in our country and to travel as we wish. But do we really have the right to go wherever we want in this country? My grandparents used to have own a farm in Wisconsin, and they were not welcome there. Even though it was their land, many people in the small town made sure that they did not belong there. Some actions that we can take to reduce prejudice and stereotypes are A, have as many different friends as possible. We should get out of our comfort zone and try to all know one another. The more we do this, we will learn and appreciate people and cultures that are not exactly like us. B, my mom takes me to lots of events to learn more about politics and racism. I think getting involved with neighborhood things and going to events is another way. C, when you see others being mistreated, stand up and speak against it. If we stand by and watch it, it means that we are agreeing with the mistreatment. Prejudice and stereotypes are damaging to human rights and are harmful to our society overall. We need to continue to work to make people not prejudge. I agree with one of my mom's posters that says, "We all do better when we all do better." Senator Paul Wellstone. Thank you.
We're going to watch a quick short video. Joe, here it comes. It's about 2 minutes, 27 seconds long. It's a great video. I'm not going to say too much about it because you'll see it in a second.
I need to move. I watch.
Just so you're not trying to clean your lips.
Male, and I am prejudiced. It is something I wasn't taught, but it's kind of something that I learned. What can I do to change, to be a better American?
Responded off the top of my head, but from my heart, and I told him thank you, and I just came up with some thoughts about how he could sort of integrate his life and learn to have more empathy and compassion for the people of color.
Your ability to just say, this is what I have these fears and prejudices, and I want to get over them, is one of the most powerful things that we can do. So what can you do? Get to know Black families. Join a church if you are a religious person that is a Black church or a church that is interracial. Foster conversation in your family and in your neighborhood where you're asking exactly those kinds of questions.
I think a lot of white folks wanted to hear that they could make that kind of admission and not be greeted with the anger that they fear, but rather understanding and a sort of productive way forward. I went down to North Carolina and I met with Gary, and we furthered that conversation about race and asked each other hard questions, and it was amazing.
I said this to somebody else I could talk to again, and here we are, we're talking to you again. When you get to know people, usually your fears are unjustified. Don't let it go by. If you've got 8 million people responding positively to my insecurities, they must be having the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just something that is we don't practice. And taking that first step is the hardest thing.
It's time for us to actually have a conversation with white folks, and time for white folks to have a conversation with each other about how it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. That just because people of color might be advancing, just because there are more immigrants from different countries in our society, doesn't mean that it has to come at your expense. There's just not enough of those conversations.
Thanks, Joe. So with that, I am hoping to turn to have this group discussion here. Bear in mind, it's 11:25, so we went a little over our time, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll go with the flow here. But I wanted to ask anybody, after seeing this video, does anyone feel like that? Have they ever felt a situation like that, where they feel like, I have bias, I'm a white person and I have bias? Whoa! Remember, Heather, I didn't know if I was going to get a response to that one. So, I would ask one of the people who raised their hand, if you go to the mic, if you would. Yes! I'm so happy, yes.
Hold my hands.
Tell me about your situation, if you wouldn't mind. What's the situation that you had that you felt like you had bias? We'll start with this gentleman and then end here. Thank you, sir.
I really appreciate this conversation today. I'm a white guy, and I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, and diverse meant Catholic and Lutheran in my family. So I was ignorant, and I realized how ignorant I still am. I have some black friends, and I've had for a long time, but I realize I still hold stereotypes. When I walk down the street and I see a group of black guys, I was downtown Minneapolis, going to a concert a month or so ago, coming out at night, and there was a group of black guys along the street, dark street, going to my car, and we didn't change the side of the street, but we walked carefully, really aware. And I was aware of feeling afraid and telling myself, you know, have I ever been attacked? No. Have I ever been in a situation where I felt uncomfortable and nothing happened? Yeah, right. Not just with black guys, other times too. So what is it about this? I don't know what it is. But what I do know is, you know, this is absolutely right. We need to be talking with each other. We need to be in each other's homes. We need to be breaking bread with each other, going to church with each other, and breaking down those walls. You know, we know that there are more interracial marriages than there ever were before, and that's a great thing. We know my niece goes to Edison High, or we're doing with Edison High, and some of these questions she couldn't understand what we were talking about. I mean, there's some kids there at least who just get it. You know, this business about race, they got black friends, they got Indian friends, they got friends from Thailand. That's not an issue. Friends from Mexico, you know, they just got friends. And they don't see each other the same way I do. This is not true in all schools, it's not true with all kids, but I know it's true with my niece. That gives me hope. And my question really is, how can we, well, I'll tell you, my hope is all the crap the new administration has a bright side in that it's bringing up hidden stuff so that we're here today, and there are other people who are looking at some of the things that are being said and saying, that is outrageous. We cannot, you know, we need to be showing up at Washington, we need to be signing petitions, we need to be showing up in the freeways, we need to be doing something because what we've got before is not working, and what people are now saying out loud, which was hidden before, is coming up and we need to deal with it. So I'm really glad we're starting the conversation today. So thank you guys and thank the audience for being here.
Thank you.
Someone else?
I couldn't be more privileged. I could not be more privileged. I grew up in Wisconsin in an area, think Lake Minnetonka, if Minneapolis wasn't close by, okay? So the lake I grew up on, the people were owners of Harnisch-Baker Steel, and they were surgeons, they were selling, everybody was rich. My family, not so much, but we happened to get in early. But anyway, to make a long story short, there wasn't a person of color within 15 miles of my house unless they were the foreign exchange students at the high school or something like that. I had no idea. I would say, I'm 60 years old, I would say I heard of white privilege 5 years ago. Had no idea. And I've lived in Roseville 3 years, lived in St. Paul for 27. Before that, started to get a sense of, but here's a story. I got pulled over one time for speeding, and there were 4 things wrong. My tabs were expired, because I didn't pay attention to that stuff. I always had a company car, and I didn't pay attention. So my tabs were expired. I was speeding. I also had 2 forms of my driver's license, because I didn't know you couldn't. I just got lost one, and they sent me a fresh one, so I had 2. That's against the law to carry 2 driver's licenses. And then also I had gotten a speeding ticket within a year of that already. And the policeman nicely told me where to go to get the tabs, who to talk to, so that the next day I could go down and say, I got the tabs, he cut the ticket in half. Nothing happened other than I followed the instructions. And I started to think about it later. What would have happened if I weren't like this innocuous looking little white woman? If I looked threatening, or I looked different, or whatever, what might have happened there? It could have been a whole different scene. And I'm just starting to get a handle on how that could have been for somebody else. And so I got to read the book. I got to get myself involved, and I really appreciate what you're doing today. But there are plenty of people, I think. And also, I'd just like to say, I'm a pretty friendly person. If anyone is a person of color that would like a friend, I don't have any friends. Well, I've got Rick.
I'm black.
That's true. But Rick and I have never sat down together and had coffee like those people. So, Rick, do you want to do that? I have, yeah, I do, and that's, I haven't seen her in a long time. So, and that, if you're watching, you are my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I would say that my story is similar to the 2 people who just went before me. I grew up in a small town in southern Minnesota, and again, no experience with people who are different, except I was Catholic and I was the minority. And just to say how hatred goes anywhere, my dad grew up as a Catholic in that John Birch Society, burned a cross at the end of his lane. So it's just, hatred's everywhere. But I would say that it's been, most of my life I just didn't know what really went on. And have come to it lately. And I think that I've been lucky enough to have a couple of Latino friends that have been, trusted me enough to be honest with me about my own ignorance about things. But the one group of people that I feel I've never been able to have friendships with that were trusting friendships have been African Americans. And I work in another community, long commute, long days. I come home, my neighborhood is predominantly white with some immigrants in it, and I know them. But I don't know where to get to know people of color, especially African Americans in Roseville. I don't see them when I come home from work. I don't happen to see them in my church, but I go to a church in St. Paul. And so my question is, if we're in this group of people who obviously are here because of a concern, how do we go about making a connection when I think there is, for very legitimate reasons, a wall of mistrust? And how do we make that first step? And how do we reach out to someone to find out and have those conversations? So that's my question for the panel.
Does anyone want to address that?
A quick statement. Something you could probably do is coordinate with your church to reach out to other churches, to other like Baptist churches, other interfaith churches, that might be a very good start, and things could branch from there.
Hi. Thank you all for being here today. I've learned so much from you. I'm an organizer. I live in St. Anthony Village. I've been very active since I was a high schooler and dated a Native American man who was pulled over and arrested and thrown to the ground, and had all kinds of stuff happen in a small town in Michigan. So my awareness has been at a high level. I consider a pretty high level for a long time. I also have 2 children that were adopted from China. And being here today just corrected a bias, and I just want to let people know that no matter where you are on the spectrum, you're going to continue to have biases, and you need to constantly examine them. My daughter came home from school this week. She was at a Chinese immersion school until she was in 4th grade, so she speaks fairly fluent Chinese. She's a 7th grader now. And they brought in an art program talking about Chinese brushstroke. And she was explaining to me how frustrated she was because my kids now have these awareness levels because they have a mom who's constantly taking them to protests and things like that. But she mentioned that the teacher was mispronouncing the words, and that she wasn't teaching it appropriately, and that she was really frustrated. And rather than help her understand that the way she felt was valid, I explained to her that the school doesn't have a budget to bring in teachers to teach specific things, and that the teacher was trying her best to say the words in the right way, even though she didn't get it right, and that Claire's job was to help her understand that. And that was so terribly wrong of me, and after listening to some of you today, I'm going to go home and have a conversation and validate to her that she has a right to own her own culture and expect that people can meet her where she's at instead of her having to do that work. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
So just quickly before we get to yours, but I want to address 2 things. One, just to set the record straight, apathy and indifference is participation. So as a matter of just record, if you're not out there trying to do something, engage somebody, and there's some things that transcend race and politics and all of these things in our world, and one of those things is just friendship and love. And if you can reach out to somebody and show that, no matter who it is, that will help bridge that gap of understanding. One thing I want to mention here too, because I know that, let's be plain, white people in general, and myself included, I struggle with this too. You will feel badly when you confront this. And you're going to resist it, because you don't want to feel bad. Nobody does. The world doesn't need more broken people filled with guilt in it. It needs active participants doing what the young man stood up here and talked about a little while ago, participating in freedom and justice and those sorts of things. And as much as it sounds like I'm preaching to the choir here, because I know a lot of you are interested, I feel very strongly about that. So if we don't get involved, one of the immutable laws of revolution is as the grip tightens, the resistance will grow. And we all know where that leads. I think we do. If we don't, we should try to understand that, but that's it. Thank you.
We're going to go here to Heather, and then we'll go to
So I have a unique perspective. I was raised in complete and utter racism. In our home, words and phrases when I was growing up that were used to describe people of color were horrendous and funny and never ending. And then I grew up and I had 2 beautiful adopted Black children. And I was just never going to talk about race. I was just going to raise my kids. Until a lot of people treated my children in ways that I thought were over. And when a woman grabbed my 2-year-old son in the grocery store one day and shook him because she thought she had the right over his body, I realized that we had not come as far as I thought we had just from me leaving my dad's negative words behind. So to answer your question about how do we do this with the same intentionality that it took to make your neighborhood white. When we don't just get to sit back as white people and say, my neighborhood was white, I don't have any black friends. Our neighborhoods were white because they were redlined to be white. And so if we are going to make a difference, then it's the job of the person who has been the receiver of the privilege to get to the discomfortable place, the uncomfortable place. It's not my job to sit in my world and say, I'm sorry, I don't have any black friends. That's not a luxury that I believe that I am afforded because of my privilege. It's to come to places like this and to make myself uncomfortable, and when I realize things that are said that I don't like knowing about myself, instead of creating drama or tears or something else, I sit down in my discomfort and I say, that sucks. I don't like learning that about myself. That's ugly. That thought that I have in the back of my head that was put there by a lot of people, I thought it for myself, and now I have to examine that. And that's how we make a difference, but we do it with intentionality and discomfort. Those are two things that are required of the white people who actually want to do something to improve our world. For my kids.
I didn't stand right away because it felt like I was echoing. When Naya and I met at the library a couple months ago, after a workshop there, it was Race the Power of Illusion. And I struggled because I grew up with adopted cousins who were of color, and one was Native American. And one day a Native American cousin who didn't stay with our family long was arrested. And I don't know that it was warranted, but I was little. But I remember getting blamed for making the decision to walk to the gas station and use the bathroom. Because I should have had the good judgment, even though she was 7 years older than I was, to know not to do that. And it was such a mixed message my whole life that I just was like, no, this is not how life goes. This is not how the world operates. So I went to Race the Power of Illusion, and there were people there who were ready to bring out the skinhead and bring the cross out. And I can't tolerate it. I'm not okay with it. I've stopped. When my son was here, and he's 25, he was a baby. I had him in my hands. I watched the car get pulled over with an African-American driver, and I stood in the middle of Central Avenue and watched the cop. And he said, do you have a problem, ma'am? I said, nope, just watching. And she said, well, you just run along. I go, as soon as you're done, I'll run along. Well, the guy was gone in 30 seconds. He didn't apparently have a reason to stop him. I can't shut up. And that hasn't been easy. I've been told to shut up my whole life. And I'm tired of shutting up. I have to speak up. I cannot live this dual life where I'm told what's right and I see what the other people do. So when Naya and I met, and I was so happy she was willing to say, yes, we have to make a difference. I was heartbroken to find out we did not have one shared friend on Facebook. Not one. We live a mile from each other. We all have to stand up, and we have to find ways to have dinner, to break down that wall, to find ways to be better human beings. And yes, this political climate has made it where we can't tolerate it anymore. But if you're on the Human Rights Commission, you need to speak from that point of view there. If you're on the school board, you need to speak from that point of view there. If you're on the PTA, you need to speak from that point of view there. No matter where you are, you need to speak from that point of view wherever you are. It's not okay. It's never been okay, but now it's done. We are done. I think your friend Huda said a thing. I can't believe we're still having this conversation. I can't believe we're having this conversation. But we have to have this conversation, and we have to find ways to include and to involve people. I happen to be born this way, but I am not willing to deal with it. I am not willing, and I welcome any other ideas you have for making our community. I want to live here, and I want all the people who I see at Target to feel like they belong here. I want to not have them be trolled and have people searching to make sure they're not stealing something at Target. When somebody puts it on next door, I don't want that bullshit that you hear, oh, well, they really weren't being trolled. No, they were. What are you doing, and what can we do more? Because I am not immune, but we need to find ways. And I'm a teacher, and I feel like we just need to keep finding ways, but I'm welcome, and I think we need to know today, right here in this community, how do we keep this conversation going where we are including and involving every human who lives and wants to be part of this community?
I want to take a second to jump in. It's astonishing to me that we've been sitting here for 2.5+ hours having a discussion on race in America. And I'm just sitting here wondering, when are we going to talk about the police? I mean, we've been sitting here talking about racism and ain't nobody brought up the cops in any real capacity up to this point. A lot of y'all get to go home and watch the evening news, and then you sit and you bite your nails and you worry about ISIS and the Taliban and Hamas and Boko Haram or whatever else. I'm infinitely, exponentially more worried and afraid of the police than I ever have been of anyone Arab, of anyone in any terrorist organization. Because I don't feel like I've been in any jeopardy of ISIS killing me, but I feel like absolutely any encounter I have with the police could be the day that I die. With absolute sincerity. That's not hyperbole and it's not exaggeration. I've believed for the bulk of my adult life that anytime any cop decides he wants to take me out, he can put 2 bullets in my forehead and make up a story afterwards. No pre-thought was necessary. He did insert reason here, and we'll move on. Won't no charges be brought against him. A few family members are going to be mad and go down to City Hall, and a month and a half later, the world will have moved on. It's shocking to me that it hasn't come up in any real capacity up to this point. I mean, I don't even know. I thought it would have come up by now. I could go on and on about it.
You know, I was actually going to just quick touch on that. We talked about that a lot in the first one.
But everybody went in the first one, yeah.
I know everybody wasn't there. I'm just saying. We talked about that a lot. So the questions that I came with specifically kind of, deviated from that, whereas the first time around, I did have those questions about the police. You had a question.
So I guess that's that.
Just quickly speak to what you're just saying. Just quickly speak to what you're just saying. You talked earlier about fear, that there's a lot about fear here. But I think it's a really sad statement that we're afraid of some of the poorest people in this country, us white people, when we walk the streets at night. You're afraid of the authority figures. You're afraid of the cops. You're afraid of the legislators. That's wrong. That's really, really messed up because our authority figures and our cops need to be people we look up to. And so that's just messed up. You have real fear. The other thing is, I grew up in a white town. I grew up, well, mostly white at the time, or St. Paul. I had one black kid in high school, and he was adopted from Africa. We made him homecoming king. That was really big for us. But, again, he was adopted from Africa. He wasn't one of the black kids from the city. I work in one of the whitest towns in Ramsey County. And I just want tools. I want tools from you guys, white or black, tips for little things. We're talking big picture all day long here, but just any little things, tips you can give. And friendly people on Facebook. That's a great one. If anybody wants to friend me, talk to me.
We're gonna have some time to.
Yep.
We'll have time to talk after.
Yeah. But if you each want to give any little tip that we can do besides, going to church, because I'm not a real faithful person, sorry. But any little things you can do, like I try to make conversations on elevators because I'm just weird that way. So I'll talk to anybody on an elevator. But anyway, just little things that if you guys have tips, especially Marty and Donald, you've been good, well-spoken, and Frank, if you want to add in, little things you've done to make it easier to either talk to white people or to interact with African Americans.
What's your name?
Therese.
Therese, okay. Well, I got a couple. One, I always like to get this out of the way because, and there's a few black folks in the audience, but if you get pulled over by a police officer, do not quote them the Constitution. Well, because they don't care about the Constitution at that stop. They care about statutes. Okay, so if you're going to argue with a policeman, and I know Rasheem will tell me you don't argue with policemen. From experience, I understand. But and we have a policeman in here that could address this if he wants to. But cops are not out there to enforce the Constitution. They're enforcing statutes. So if they pull you over and you want to have a discussion, a friendly discussion with them, if you believe you can have that, talk about statutes, you know, or whatever like that. For Therese, I'll just say this. Let's talk about the cold, hard truth right now. Rasheem and I have been friends for a number of years, and I can't count the time on one hand that we have actually been in each other's homes. Okay? So let me just put that out there, that even though Rasheem and I, we identify with a lot of the same things, we care about each other from a distance, there still exists that, I don't know if it's a wall we put up, or I don't know what it is really, but, and that is in some ways with all my African, I don't even say that word, black friends, okay, because African American is a label that I believe white folks invented to differentiate people. But again, I wish those relationships were stronger and more, I would say, deeper than they are right now. And I'm working on it now. I'm 50 years old, and I had them when I was young, and I want to reconnect with them. But even, I'm just saying, even just a conversation, you know. So, yeah.
I think one of the best ways to get new black friends, start talking to them. Ask me my name. Don't say the black guy. Say, hi, how you doing? And I'll tell you, my name's Rick. And we'll start talking, we'll start a conversation. And we may find something that we have in common. We may not. And I may not be that black friend that you need. But, you know, not everybody needs to be your friend. But you can have a conversation with people and get to know them. It's the easiest thing in the world.
Hi, Rick. I'm Don.
How you doing, Don?
One second. You know, he said talk to people. Ask them their name. Treat everybody with the same respect that you would treat your spouse or your children with. If we respect one another, we can have those conversations. We can get to be friends. You see somebody who needs help, offer them a hand. It's really that simple, but we all have to do it, and we don't do it. I've stopped and changed tires for people on the side of the road. In a white neighborhood, a black woman with a flat tire. She sat there for an hour and a half waiting for a tow truck, and they changed her tire. People don't stop and help other people. They call the police on them. And if they're afraid of the police, you're not doing them a favor. Step out of your comfort zone and be friendly and respectful, and you'll make friends.
I would say the biggest thing is to expound on what you're saying, is to speak up. One of the most uncomfortable places to be is in a room full of people when they say something or the leader says something that you know is wrong. It takes more courage for you to stand up, put your job on the line, put your profession on the line, and say, I don't think this is right. We are not here to do this. We are not here to label people. We are here to help people. When you see wrong, do right. I guarantee you, you will make a lot of friends that way. But you don't do it just because to make friends. You do it to show people that you know that you have seen wrong, that you speak out. That has been probably the biggest thing since I've moved to Minnesota. It's just sometimes I've been the only one in the room, and it's like, I'm not just going to lie. But I'll give you an example. I'm going to put it out here. I was the first black teacher in the Rocori School District, in their history. It was my first year teaching. This was a couple of years ago. Superintendent said something, made an off-color comment, and everybody was looking. If you were looking in that room, you could find me in about half a second. I listened to him, and I was debating, well, I'm not a tenure, this is my first year, I don't know what to do. And the second thought that came into my mind was, I'm about to lose my job. But that's okay. I had a job before I was a teacher, I'll have one after I'm a teacher. But I'm not going to look my kids in the face who've been bullied because of their race, because of their sexual preference, and let this slide. Like the old saying goes, injustice here, was it justice anywhere? Was it justice somewhere? Is justice anywhere? That is, but yes, an injustice. So I went up and I told him. And to be honest, he didn't have a clue about not having a clue. But I let them know. I said, no. I look forward to teaching the kids, but that is wrong. What you said was wrong. So I would say, just to reinforce, when you leave out of here, at some point in time, I'm almost willing to begin a bet between now and Monday, you'll see some injustice. Okay? You speak out, and I guarantee you, especially if it's a racial injustice, you'll definitely make a friend.
I wanted to thank you for your leadership, because I think opportunities to talk and listen to each other and hear each other's stories is a way to break down these barriers. And Mark, you mentioned moving to Minnesota. I also think it's important to have a Minnesota context on racism, because we have story after story about our great educational system, healthcare system, but there's some real sad stories to Minnesota. We have the worst racial disparities in health, income, and education. The worst by recent studies. And just sitting here, I thought, okay, where are we in incarcerating Black Minnesotans? We're close to the top. There's even a chart, color chart of the United States, and Minnesota stands out because our neighbors aren't half as bad as we are incarcerating Black people. So I read a little bit in the article because I thought, how do they explain it? The study authors believe that the ultimate disparity in imprisonment rates of different races can be traced all the way through the criminal justice process. So, Rasheen, you talk about law enforcement and police. So I guess what I'm saying is that in Minnesota, we don't have a lot to be proud of in combating racism. And I also think maybe if we saw each state as a person suffering from a disease, Minnesota should be racing to the emergency room because we're bleeding of racism. And it's institutionalized. If our prison system has disproportionate rates of people of color, then it goes back to how we are sentencing, how we're arresting, and how we're treating people of color. If our racial disparities in education and health and income are as bad as they are, that goes way back to how we set policy, how we treat our neighbors, how we even run our city councils. So I think it is about meeting and greeting other people of color, meeting and greeting people who are white, but it's far more serious than that. It's about where we work, what is going on in our workplace that's wrong, or what is going on in our human resources departments that are wrong. So I think each one of us has like a sphere of influence that we have to do what we can. And it's not just waiting for that opportunity, it's actually taking it. Because I think your stories are so important because you're a teacher. One of you used to be in, you used to work in the prison system. So I mean, the stories that you have from where you work and where you live, I think it's so important for us to hear, but I think it's beyond what we're talking about today in some ways. I mean, this is a start, but I really think in order for us to change, it has to be big, it's urgent, and it's today. And we have a legislative session going on right now, and I'm not seeing a lot of our legislators even seeing this as a problem. I believe our governor has stepped up to the plate, but we really have to, I mean, this is not just someday, it's like right now.
Can I jump back in?
Hold on one second. So I just want to quick bring to your attention that it is 11:58.
We're gonna run long.
Really hard to keep people on track and on time here. So we'll go here to you, Rasheen.
Thanks.
We'll go to you, Donald, and then we'll go to the audience. Okay?
All right. Everybody's talking about this friendship connection that they want to make, and that's good. Make a friend. That's fine. Foster your individual understanding. But the bigger problem is a lot of y'all ain't keeping it real. I mean, I'm in a room full of people, and the only one of y'all, Heather, had the courage to even admit that you came from a racist-ass family. I'm I'm going to suggest that the vast majority of got a racist ass brother or some racist ass parents or a bunch of racist ass co-workers at the job, and y'all say nothing about it. They tell all these jokes and make all these negative comments and these derogatory slurs, and y'all just start looking around like Stevie Wonder, like you didn't hear it or like it doesn't bug you. That's a way bigger problem than I don't know a black guy, so I couldn't ask him no questions. You know what I'm saying? You got to start being honest. If you're here because you care, I'm assuming, then start keeping it real. Be honest. You got to check these racists in your life. I mean, if you ain't going to say something to the people that you know personally, then where do you expect this to go? I mean, where do you expect it to lead to? I mean, when's the last time any of you heard a single politician discuss race in an honest manner? I'll wait. Anybody? I mean, Mark David brought it up. They gunned him down instantly. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you don't hear it, because everybody looks around like Stevie Wonder, like it ain't a real thing. If you can't even get the courage to admit that you've got family members that are blatantly racist, co-workers that you talk to every day, you go to lunch with Jim, but don't want to check Jim when Jim's talking about Somalis, or when Jim's talking about sending them Mexicans back to Mexico, then you're part of the problem. You're a giant component of the problem. And since I know I'm probably not going to get this mic back, I'm going to go back to the police for a second. Man, I've been pulled over so many times for fitting the description that you wouldn't believe it. I'm willing to bet none of you have. I've had to get out of my car, you know, put my hands in the hood while they search around, we need you to pop the trunk open, the whole bit, because I fit the description. Or somebody just robbed something somewhere, looked like you two brothers might have been it, and suffer that indignity that I don't think any of you have had to do. I've walked with a friend of mine from my house to Domino's Pizza at 9:30 at night on a Saturday night, because I had a friend sleeping over or whatnot. We're about 13 years old. Walk up to this Domino's Pizza, because I'm too cheap to pay for the tip, because I'm 13, 14, 15 years old or whatnot. And walking back in my residential neighborhood over south, woo! The cherries come on in the middle of a residential, not on Chicago or on Lake Street, on 41st and 13th, between a bunch of houses. Bright ass light shine on you where you can't see. Where you boys got that box right there. Like I'm trafficking cocaine in the Domino's Pizza box. I mean, I've been thrown up against the wall with a couple of my friends and had Officer Friendly come over and what you got in your pager here and clear all the numbers in my pager just to be a dick about it. You know what I'm saying? Just to oppress and put that thumb on the back of your neck to let you know we're watching you and waiting for you to slip up. And it's something that probably the vast majority of y'all have no clue about, don't worry about, wouldn't even contemplate being a problem. You know what I'm saying? Y'all, you're here because you care. But you got to take it further than that. And it's not about making a friendship connection with Jamal when you see him. It's about being honest about the severity of the situation. You're hearing all this stuff today. Be honest and internalize it and believe it. People are saying this stuff because it's real. And this is surface scratching. We're not even really getting into the minutia of what people are going to or to root causes and all that good stuff. But if you're not going to take it and run with it and start having a real genuine impact on the actual racism that you know in your heart of hearts that you're encountering in your circle of friends, then this ain't going nowhere. It ain't going to get nowhere. Black people screaming about racism is a moot point. It ain't going to get nowhere. Yeah. Yeah, got a question in the audience. Oh, go ahead.
We're going to go here, and then we'll go there.
Which one first?
Did you have one?
Sure, yeah. I wanted to, actually, before you did it, I was going to bring up the police again so that you could have a forum for it, but you did it. The only thing I can explain is my experience. And so I'd like to hear really quickly from the rest of the panel. I have 4 children, 1 adopted, and ever since they were young, we've trained them that the police are friendly, that we introduce them to police officers. I've been through Citizenship Academy where I've spent 8 weeks learning to work with the police, the fire departments, emergency services. I've gotten involved actively in my community, and the conversation that I've had with all 4 of my children is, if you're pulled over by the police, be polite, say yes sir, yes ma'am, thank them for their time. Don't argue the case because they're officers of the law, and the only way to get out of the ticket, if you get one, is to work with an officer of the court who's a lawyer. And from listening to what you've said, because I think your immediate response is going to be that I don't understand your world. And I don't, and that's exactly why I want to have this part of the conversation. My only reaction to it is, I've educated my children to be kind, to be thoughtful, and to be very respectful of the police, and to establish in their mind that the police are there to help them. And I'd love to hear from the rest of you guys, what's been your experiences?
My experience is this, and I'll sum it up like this. Every day I teach it like it's my last day on earth. Because although I have all of this behind me, I know that doesn't mean jack to a cop. For the most part, there are good cops out there, I won't lie. But every time, if I get pulled over, you know, I'm wondering like it could be the next Philando Castile. When I was working as a prison guard, I had my uniform on, I would go to work. I've actually, this is years ago, I had police pull me over and tell me like, well, you know, it's a crime to impersonate an officer. And I'm like, well, I guess it's a good thing that I am. And by the way, what is your badge number? You know, so as far as I don't have kids, but the kids who I've talked to, who are students or who are like my kids, I tell them, says, look, you have to be careful out on the street. You see what's going on in the news. So my version isn't telling you, they're the man in blue is a friend to you, okay? You know, because based on what we've seen in the news, I don't see an indication of that. So I minimize my interaction whatsoever with law enforcement. Even though I'm following the rules, you know, I drive the speed limit, my insurance, my tag, everything is up to date. I minimize my presence. You know, it's like, I've served this country, I've done a lot for this country, and still, you know, there's this bias, you're a second-class citizen. Actually, we're not even rating as second-class citizens. There are people shooting black men, you know, and getting away from it, and, you know, claiming it's justice and stuff like that. So how can I actually sit here and say I trust somebody who can shoot me for no reason and then just get off for it and go back to work and get a desk job the next day? That I don't understand. So that's my experience with them.
My experience with the police, well, I have been stopped, I have been questioned for no reason. Not here in Minnesota, but where we live in California. I've been pretty police free since we moved to Minnesota. But what I do fear is I have 2 sons, I have grandchildren, and they're out in the street a lot more than I am. And so we have to have the talk about, if you're in a group and it's all black, there's a chance that you're going to be stopped. There's a chance that you're going to be questioned. You can be by yourself. I was sitting in my yard one day, working in my garden, and there may be some problem. Maybe Johnny didn't get breakfast. And with our political country, the way our political process is going right now, they may not get lunch either because we've got a president that wants to take the food out of their mouths. There is so much going on with our schools that need our help, our teachers' help, and our school board's help. And I bet if you go to a school board meeting, you're not going to find too many people sitting in there speaking their voice because they don't have the time. When I was growing up, my dad worked, my mom was able to stay home. We don't have that ability anymore. Just about every home, both parents are working just to pay the rent, just to pay those bills. And it's sad, but that's what they've got to do to keep their family together. I don't know, I don't have an answer for you other than I don't think you get paid enough for what you have to do. And like I said, it's just these kids are screaming out. When a child makes, I was not a quiet child in school. I was one of those kids that could go to school Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. and then I missed the rest of the week. But I was able to keep my grades up because I got bored, and that just might be one of the problems. Maybe some of these kids are bored. We have to challenge them. And then there are the ones that are getting left behind because people don't want to deal with them. If I've got 40 kids in the classroom and Billy can't read at that level, I can't catch him up. So once again, the only thing I can think of is we have to speak out more as parents.
We got one down here.
So you talked about suspensions, and I think part of the problem is in the school, a child is having a problem, and then he goes off to another class, and the first teacher tells the second teacher he's causing trouble. And that teacher is focused on him when he causes even a little bit of trouble. My wife is a teacher, and she comes home and tells me that she tries to break that cycle, and if she knows a child is having trouble throughout his classes, and he acts up, she makes a point to not send him away immediately. Because if she sends him out of the classroom, that just perpetuates what's going on, and he's going to be suspended eventually. She keeps him in the classroom and is able to control the class and control him. He's learning. He's learning how to be in that classroom. He's learning the subject matter. And then when he goes to another class, the teacher is not doing that same thing, he's getting sent to the office immediately. We have to break that cycle within the school. But beyond that, what Rashim said, this is a symptom, it's not the cause. And we need to work on that cause, because all we're doing is flushing them through the school system. And yeah, I use the term flush because you put them in, you pull the lever and toss them out, just like you would with the toilet. Because we're not enriching them, we're not expanding their minds, we're not respecting them. And that goes for most of our schools, because these kids come in and they don't eat breakfast before they come because they don't have it. They don't have a safe place to go after school. If your needs aren't met before school, those kids aren't going to be able to focus on learning. And we, as a society, we need to make sure their needs are met before they get to the school door.
I do just want to clear up.
Sorry, it's being recorded, so you got to be at the mic. Thank you.
I just do want to put in that St. Paul School District, at least now their elementary schools, provide breakfast for every single child that comes in. I just want to make sure I put that in.
I know that.
Yeah.
I got a comment on that.
Okay, and I do believe,
Let me
we had another question. Did you have a question?
Well, this conversation is going so well, I don't want to disrupt it with it.
I just wanted you to know you weren't being ignored, so.
But I don't feel ignored. I'll wait till this calms down and then I'll take us in a different direction.
Okay, sounds good.
I think Marty's got it.
All right, it might not be too calm. I'm just going to tell you right now. So I get the white privilege of hanging around with white folks and hearing their conversations without a black person present. And let's just talk about the elephant in the room right now. How come black folks don't take responsibility for their own selves? How come they don't pull themselves up by the bootstraps? How come their kids are coming to school misbehaving when my kid is polite and there to learn? And why is that happening? Why is that happening with black kids in our school system? Why are they so disruptive? Can't black folks find a way to control their kids like white folks do? With Ritalin and the fidget shit, you give the kids now, the spinners. I saw a young man with one here earlier, and my child has that too. My child has that because if I take away his iPad, he'll be on that. But let me just say this, it's hard to take responsibility when you are denied the opportunity. So to take responsibility, to have an earnest effort at that. Now look, I'll just be brief here, but America is an experiment, right? And it's broken right now. And whether we want to face it or not, the scab that Rashim mentioned earlier, when you peel it back, it's a deep wound, a deep wound. And I know it's not popular among white folks, but really the only way to repair that wound is A, to face it, and B, to talk about reparations. and what that means. And I know that's a scary word for some folks, but reparations would help heal those wounds. Now, how we approach that's a whole big issue, but I would encourage you also, because Rasheen mentioned it, and we'll have more to say on this later, but there's a couple of references out there for people that they need to check out. One is a book by Michelle Alexander called The New Jim Crow. And if you haven't read that book, you should pick it up and give it a read. It's not an indoctrination into black culture. It's a reality check for what's going on with the prison to pipeline to prison stuff. And check that book out, it's a good one. And there's a gentleman on Facebook, you look him up please. His name is Max Parthas. He's a new abolitionist. I know you've heard of old abolitionists. You guys remember the old dude, Frederick Douglass, he had crazy hair. Well, there's some new people out there that are abolitionists, and they're abolitionists because the prison to pipeline is a form of modern day slavery. And I just wanted to mention that quick, and I'll let this nice lady ask her question.
Let me, super brief, but as it pertains to the original topic that was brought up about schooling, without stating the obvious, because I know it's not obvious to some of y'all, when you start suspending these kids, these young black kids who come from a host of systemic problems, more or less thrust upon them, and he's suspended, and then he's labeled as a troubled kid, and then by the time he's 14, 15, he's just kind of done with school altogether, and then he has to start finding a way to work, but you didn't graduate, and then you start selling drugs, you start stealing TVs, and then you're part of this prison system that is absolutely, without a doubt and without exaggeration, a form of modern day slavery. It's all tied together, and you can't talk about one aspect without touching on the rest of it. I don't want to dive too far into the prison thing, because that's a whole another 15 minutes right there. You got a question?
We're going to go here. Which way do you want to go? We'll go to you first. Okay. So I'm going to take this a little different way, because when you all were talking about needing to be 130% in order to be, I think every woman in this room recognized that as an element of our shared experience. And yet, throughout history, the women's movement and the civil rights movement have competed over who gets to go first. And I think there are actually forces out there, and part of them are the ones that help white women fear black men. You know, that's a systemic piece that have prevented our needs and our movements from joining some force. And how do we get beyond that? And do we need an additional conversation that maybe is, you know, ask a black and white woman for shared experience? And how do we join those forces together? Because this is an element that many of us understand, that element of your experience, not all of your experience, that element, boy, we get it deeply about what that means and what white mansplaining means, which is something that we live with all the time, being told what we should understand by white men who think they know more than we do about what we're experiencing. So I'll just sit down and ask you.
So I'll start with this one. I work for a woman-owned business. My wife actually is the CEO. And we've talked about the differences between the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement and the various ways that you can get a particular ideology ahead. I'm going to compare and contrast two different types of ideas. The first idea is one of protest. Black Lives Matter. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that that's true. Now, the organization Black Lives Matter, when you bring it up in your mind, do you see it as a nurturing organization or do you see it as a protest organization? Yeah, and that frame of reference is the way that we measure that particular organization. For me, when I think of Black Lives Matter, I think of riots, I think of stones being thrown at police, I think of cities being shut down, I think of newscasters who start off the conversation with a peaceful protest, today turned into, and then follow on with the rest of that. They always try to say a peaceful protest. Now, the narrative there is that Black Lives Matters as an organizational institution is a protesting organization. Now, compare and contrast that with the National Association of Women Business Owners, or NAWBO. NAWBO's 2017 convention is going to actually be here in Minneapolis. And the National Association of Women Business Owners, I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it is an organization of nurturing. What they do is they mentor women that are thinking about being entrepreneurs. They mentor women to understand how finances work, how big businesses actually become, or small businesses become big businesses. And they just had a Hall of Fame event where they took many, there was, I believe, 8 women who were honored for their entrepreneurial spirit here in Minnesota. The CEO of the Ken Davis Barbecue Company was one of those that was honored. And she talked about how she had to take over from her husband this organization and the things that she had to learn along the way. And it was very specific along that glass ceiling, with the achievement gap, the way that she had to be better than everybody else. In fact, it was really interesting. She said, I had to be 110% better. The reason is the expectations of who she was as a person was different than who she saw herself as. And so get involved. To answer your question, how do we solve this? I would suggest getting involved in organizations that are nurturing in nature as opposed to protesting in nature.
I gotta jump in next, I'm sorry. That's a bunch of BS. And I'm not trying to attack you as a person, but it's hard to listen to that, quite honestly. And this is with all due respect to the women's movement. It is imperative that women have the same rights as men. It's a different conversation, but I believe that with every ounce of my being. I have 2 daughters that I'm raising who are only 5 and 7, and I'll be good. I'm not going to allow them to be denied anything. They deserve everything the world has coming to them. But Black Lives Matter has been smeared and intentionally demonized in this country because Black lives don't matter. The reason the organization exists is because Black lives don't matter, and they never have from the first one that was kidnapped, chained, and drugged over here against his will. Black Lives Matter is an explosive movement because we shall overcome ain't working. Black Lives Matter is blocking the freeway because sitting around and waiting for the verdict to come back as guilty ain't been working. Black Lives Matter has to get in your face to get on the first story of the news so that some of y'all will please and finally pay some attention to what we're trying to say is going on, because an abundance of white people still want to look at you like you're crazy when you tell them some shit's racist. They want to look at you like you're tripping, like you're just being sensitive when you tell them about the horrible cloud of oppression that hangs over every single aspect of your life. That's the reason that the freeways are getting blocked. That's the reason why they're getting arrested in droves. It's super convenient to forget how many times Martin Luther King was clunked in the head and drugged off to jail. It's super convenient to forget that Rosa Parks was drugged off that bus and thrown in jail. It's super convenient to act like the protests that were going on in the 60s were all peaceful. Like they was just hanging out, waiting for some rights to be politely bestowed upon them. That's not how this works. It's never been how this works. Sure, and it's some old Pollyanna pie in the sky stuff to say they should just organize and they should get some business efforts and they should talk to their legislature. Do you really think that's going to be effective?
No,
but hold up. Okay. That question's rhetorical. I'm trying to stay as professional as possible. You heard I had to use my high voice just now. But I'm not going to sit here in this forum and listen to Black Lives Matter being demeaned, because Black lives haven't mattered. And I'm going to scream from the mountaintops every chance I get and be as disruptive as possible until the people that ain't listening start listening, because it's necessary. It ain't going to work any other way. You keep telling people, not you obviously as an individual, but the establishment keeps telling people, let's have some calm, and let's let the system play out, and let's wait for the results. But we know how that movie ends. We done seen that movie 5 times, and I know how chapter 6 is going to end. That cop's going to get found not guilty 9.5 times out of 10. And the time they do get found guilty, it's going to be a slap on the wrist. So we need an explosive and in-your-face and impossible to ignore movement. And that's what is taking place right now. It couldn't be more necessary, and I applaud their efforts 1,000%.
Certainly. So what I want to go back to is The idea that I said was the media portrays it this way. And what is the difference in your mind? Because I'm not saying that any movement is better or worse than another. What I'm saying is the way that it's being pushed to us in the media is really different than what the core of Black Lives Matter is trying to do. And what we're being fed as a society through mainstream media is what is dictating the narrative to the rest of America. How do you change that conversation?
Well, right here, but let me answer this quick, Rasheem. I have to respond because that portrayal goes against your experiences. And a lot of those portrayals go against your actual factual experiences when you actually interact with these people. Donald, you mentioned some of the business dealings. There is no Hall of Fame for protest. There is no Hall of Fame for civil disobedience. And if you don't know about this, at the state legislature this year, they passed a law further strengthening the criminalization of standing on a freeway or blocking a airport. Now, I don't know if you know about this or not, but they call these things freedom zones. These places where should there be a zone for freedom in America? Right? From sea to shining sea, you grew up being taught that, right? And yet, and still, there isn't that place. So this is what I like to tell my friends who ask me about the Black Lives Matter protest. White people in this country are lucky there's not an armed revolution. Because if white folks were being treated the way black folks were being treated in this country for 350 years, there would be a revolution. There was a revolution. It was called the American Revolution, and that's because we paid too much taxes, right? We didn't want old King George to come down and bother us. We were, people are getting killed in the street today. So for every life that's lost, and I can name all the names, Tamir, right? I mean, make me go down the list, but right now I would tell you that if I was black in this country, I'm not even black and I'm sympathetic to it, I would be out in the street every single day, because what do Rasheem's children have to look forward to if they can live in a country where justice isn't served? So Black Lives Matter is a tepid movement. My mother used to send out leaflets and flyers and letters supporting the Black Panther movement. And the reason she did that was because, if you don't know this, the Black Panthers introduced the school lunch program in Chicago. Okay, Bobby Seale, right? Okay, so when the FBI came to visit us and told my mom she was colluding with terrorists, because black people grabbed some guns and stood and looked mean at different various venues. White folks got real scared. I just want to say this. The Black Lives Movement is mild-mannered compared to the feelings that a lot of black people are struggling with today. And when they're confronted by the injustices that they are today, I think the least we can do is be somewhat sympathetic to it. And although, Donald, I understand your perspective. I do, and I know what you're asking for. You want something nurturing rather than confrontational. We're way past that. We're way past that in this country. That is all.
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah. You've been so patient. Please let her ask her question.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. We're going to go to Marty Shante here. Go ahead.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I have two statements that will maybe lead to a question. I don't know. I want to take it back a little further to the teacher's question in regards to how she can help the African American young men in school and bring light to. I'm glad someone mentioned the prison to school pipeline system, because what that is a system that starts to research and document black and brown children, boys specifically, as young as kindergarten and the second grade, to say if they are not able to read at grade level by then they'll go to prison. So instead of investing money into their education, they invest the money into a prison cell. I believe, as a mom of 3 sons, like I said in my piece, if you are going to help our children, my son, invest in his education. When I send him to school after I've fed him breakfast, please don't assume that because he's coming from a single mother's household that he's not eating breakfast, or that his clothes are not clean, or that he won't be fed or loved or nurtured when he gets home. Please don't assume that because he's fidgety and he's a natural born musician, that in the second grade you can send him to the R&R class during reading time and math time, and then he'll be able to catch up again. What they do is they take the kids out of the classroom, send them out of the classroom during their core curriculum so they can go somewhere else. And then they write this pipeline, this paper chart. And students are not listed as students anymore. On this papers, these write-ups, they're listed as offenders. In the kindergarten, in second grade, you're labeling a student as an offender. And you're using rhetoric and language like insubordinate to authority and disruptive and things that you would use toward a criminal. So it starts there. And then you still have this thing, like Marty mentioned, the KKK. But you're concerned, Donald, about Black Lives Matter not being nurtured when they're not nurturing Black lives. So if you want us, Black lives, to be nurturing, then you nurture us. You start in the deep-rooted, systematic system that has done everything to dismantle what we are trying to bring together. However, the KKK still exists. These people who are going to help the Black lives, the children, the Black children, are still incarcerated. And speaking of laws being passed, it is now okay to criminalize and incarcerate a child as young as 10 years old and charge them as an adult. So when you have these type of discussions and you think about change and what you can do to help someone out, specifically an African-American boy, you have to get beyond the surface. You can't assume that every child is the same or every child's circumstance is the same. And you can't assume that everything is cookie cut and everything will work for everybody. You have to really focus on the person, the individual, and the constructs that are set up to fail these people, these kids, these babies, so that as adults, we can all collectively come together and say, we're still just touching the surface. We want everything to be nice. We want you to not be aggressive. We'd rather you be passionate but passive. That doesn't work. You're not going to get one or the other. You're either going to take my pain and acknowledge it and say that I have a right to be aggressive and explosive and honor that and try to be empathetic about it without trying to whitewash it and say, yeah, well, just calm down a little bit. It doesn't work that way. You can't have a second grader listed as an offender and have this paper trail follow him until he's 16, and then he sits in a guidance counselor's office and she tell him, you know, you can't really drop out at the age of 16. It's no longer a law for you to go to school. Because that's what they're doing.
I want to add something to that real quick. As a former prison guard, you're right, and the problem is much, much worse. Right now, there's statisticians who actually take the write-ups that are done on kids, and they can come up with a projection of how many bunk beds they need to add to their prisons. After hearing that, I said, I'm going to do my absolute best not to write up anyone, because I'm not going to contribute that. Someone who used to lock up people, especially a lot of black people, I had a moment of cognitive dissonance. Like I was adding to the problem. And a lot of it right now, especially with privatized prisons, no one's really talked about that, but privatized prisons, in my opinion, are horrible. If my numbers are correct, I think I read somewhere that there are more people locked up, more black people locked up right now in privatized prisons than were enslaved. That's where we are right now. And what privatized prison is security on a budget. All right? So, and I agree with you about like helping our black kids, especially with after-school programs, because I actually did a study a while back, and numbers have changed, but the ratio is pretty much the same. For every dollar that you spend on an after-school program to help a kid, you save $30 to incarcerate them, so they will not be incarcerated. So when you have that big of a savings, why are we not having more after-school programs? Why are we taking away from our kids and their futures by doing that?
But we know why. Yeah, there ain't no mystery as to why. We know exactly why.
That's
I mean,
right.
we got to talk about the nefarious nature of some of that stuff, and we
Follow
can't
the
dance
money.
around it.
It's in the B, it's in billions of dollars that's spent on the system right now. And the criminal justice system, which I'm sure the police chief is very well aware of, is struggling with this now. I mean, they, you know, but the struggle needs to ramp up a little bit and recognize that this is happening, and it needs to be more widely reported and talked about.
All right. Well, on that note, we are going to take a quick, brief intermission. Oh, I'm sorry. No,
let him ask his question.
I'm sorry. I didn't see you. We'll have a different question and then after that.
I had to play the white man card. I knew that was coming.
Yeah, white heterosexual man. Ask a question here.
You're joking.
What's that?
Just say you're joking, because some people will think you're serious. As much as you're laughing.
Just let him go.
All right. There was a privilege in the dictionary is not preceded by the word white. So, but since we did that, you did that, and that's fine, because it's germane to the discussion, it can be argued. So my question is, if we proceed the word privilege, you get to pick one, and you can expound on it if you want, but you get to pick one. The word privilege, is it equality of opportunity or equality of outcomes? Which one?
Privilege is neither of those. Privilege is not equality.
Sir, Frank, I said to pick one. That's my, as an audience member that came here today, that's my standard. Because there's been a lot of discussion and stuff, and there's a lot of stuff thrown out. Valid, invalid, standards, not standards, whatever. But my standard as a participant in this is you get to pick one. So if you can't, then just say, I will not pick one.
I won't pick one of those options because those options are not what privilege is.
Could you restate your two options real quick?
And privilege isn't white, black, red, yellow, or brown either. It's privilege.
Could you restate the specific question?
The specific question is this. I prefaced it by saying privilege is not preceded by the word white. So, if privilege on its own is preceded by something, pick one. Equality of opportunity or equality of outcomes. Which one? Or equality of outcome. Which one?
I guess I'm not understanding what you mean by proceeded by, because privilege is advantage. It's not equality. Whether it's white, whether it's male, whether it's whatever.
Right. Yep, I got it. So I'll start and then you guys will shoot down. I think what you're asking is, what is privilege? And from my understanding of it, especially in light of the way that you asked the question, it is opportunity. Because I'm granted the opportunity to do things because of my privilege. I have the ability, it was mentioned before, I can walk into a bank and be looked at as a good candidate, and then I have to fill out the paperwork, which is the outcome. I can walk into the jewelry store and be seen as a good customer, and then the outcome comes down to, can I fill out the, can I give them a credit card that's got enough money on it, or can I fill out a credit request that I've got enough in my history that I can actually get that piece of jewelry. Same thing with walking into a car dealership or anything else. To me, the privilege, whatever the prefix is to that, means I have the opportunity to participate in that activity because of, well, whether who I am or what I'm doing. Sometimes I've got privilege because I'm a male. Sometimes I've got privilege because I'm a father. Sometimes I've got privilege because I'm a small business owner. I get to get into things that others can't, and that's my opportunity to participate. The outcome is left up to me, and that comes down to training, and it comes down a lot to what our society will allow us to accept.
So I know we're going to take a little short intermission here, but I just want to say one thing about that. So there are some things that transcend your indignation or your uncomfortableness with white privilege. And one of those things is open your mind. If you free your mind, your ass will follow. And part of the things is accepting the fact that you do have white privilege. You said white privilege doesn't exist. It damn sure does exist. We see it every day. And if you only open your eyes to see it. That's not what I said. Well, I heard you say it didn't exist. All right, well, that's what I heard. Oh, that's my professor. I better be cool.
I'm going to end this. Privilege, I'm sorry. Oh, you said outcome. I would say I don't agree with either one of those statements, but I'm going to choose outcome because I have the privilege of going to that same bank, filling out that same loan, and getting a higher rate because I'm black. I also have the privilege of going into that store and filling out a loan and then being turned down, even though I probably have more than enough income to pay for what I was going to buy or get that loan because I'm black. So if it's outcome, yeah, we can all have some kind of outcome from the word privilege, but the outcome that we get is still determined by the color of our skin.
To suggest the notion, and I'm not specifically saying this was your exact point, but to suggest the notion that there isn't any white privilege in America would be either being willfully ignorant or just intentionally ignorant. Wells Fargo, second or third largest bank in America, just got busted last week for intentionally and over a pretty long stretch of time being found guilty of giving black people applying for loans higher interest rates for the exact same credit scores as their white counterparts. I got a cousin whose name's Kamal, who's not here today, who is a very skilled computer operator, computer technician, computer analyst or whatnot, and he couldn't get his application reviewed anywhere he submitted it to. So he tried to apply to the same couple of jobs, and instead of writing Kamal, he wrote Michael as his name, and boom, phone started ringing. Because wasn't nobody calling back Kamal. But don't call Michael, he might be white. You know what I mean? Privilege manifests itself in so many aspects in America that it's farcical to suggest that it's not a genuine concept that intrudes every aspect of society. I don't know how any intelligent person could honestly and legitimately argue that that concept or that notion is false. That sounds silly to me. You know better than that. If you want to admit it here in public or not, you know better than that. And come on, stop it.
We're going to go to this question here. You had a question, and then we're going to go to a quick intermission.
Maybe.
No, we will.
And all of a sudden I look up and there's 3 police officers in my yard. They were looking for some person. It wasn't me, I'm in my yard. And I'm wondering, who was this person? What did they look like? They didn't tell me a description. They just wanted to know what I was doing. As a black person, as a black man, I don't want to fear leaving my house. But every time I leave the house, my kids leave the house, my grandkids leave the house, there's a chance they won't come home. And that's the fear you don't have. I do talk to the police. We have policemen that are driving through our neighborhood all the time. My wife is a community organizer. I work with the community. So we talk to the police all the time. But it's the ones I don't talk to, that don't know me, that just see me as a black person walking through this white neighborhood that may end my life. Now, why do I have to worry about that? I try not to worry about it all the time, but it's here. As soon as I walk into the street, as soon as I go out on my boat, any little thing that I do, I have to keep it right here, that I have to make sure that my driver's license is on me, it's up to date. I've got my tags, I've got everything. Because they don't need a reason, if I'm reaching to get my wallet, to wait. You know, you said you tell your kids to answer, yes sir, no sir. I was told that when I was a kid also. I got stopped in Gulfport, Mississippi one day, and I did everything I was supposed to do. I said, yes, sir. I said, no, sir. I said, here's my license. He looked at it. He says, you're from California. I said, yes, sir. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm visiting my parents, and I'm leaving in 2 days. He said, it's a good thing, boy, because we don't want your kind around here. Now, there was no reason for him to say, and it's not your fault. That was that officer. I don't judge all officers by that one example. Just like I don't judge all people by the one example. But that's the problem. People see a black person and it's all black people are like that if something goes wrong. I don't say because this cop shot somebody, all cops are bad. But it's getting hard to say that because it's happening more and more each and every day.
So you're telling kids to be respectful, be polite, say yes sir, no sir.
Just like any other parent.
Like everybody does.
Yep.
For young black children, for young black men, and what I'm hearing from you guys, it doesn't matter.
No.
I've seen it not matter. I watch the news and I know it doesn't matter. Philando Castillo, the police officer asking for his wallet, he reached for his wallet and was shot to death. Rashid said he goes out, he knows a cop can shoot him, put 2 bullets in him and make up a story later. That's because if it ever does get to court, they're going to look at the police report and that's going to be the starting truth of the matter. If there is not some video to contradict it, and every officer on scene signs off on what's in that report, that's what gets believed. In Chicago, a boy was shot 16 times, and all the officers on the scene signed off on the report that was written. And the video came out later and showed that it was absolutely false. Police in our country, and policing in this country, puts all of the authority in the hands of the police, and it takes away the liability from them. So if they do something, the bar to prove that they are guilty of a crime is much higher than if one of us do something. It's wrong, and it's another one of those things that we need to address, so that Rashid doesn't feel like he's going to get shot when he leaves his house, so that Rick doesn't feel that the cop can run into his yard and grab him and say, what are you doing, when he's gardening in his own yard. It's something that we do need to address. And if we all believe that it doesn't happen because we're white and we're respectful, that police aren't going to bother us, well, they're not going to bother us until they do. If we let them continue to bother the black people and the brown people in our world, eventually they're going to bother us. So we need to stop it now.
I have one quick one.
I'm so sorry, Brian. I'm so sorry because I'm trying to keep us on time here. And I know, Scott, you have a quick question or statement?
Just pretty much just an analogy.
And then I got to wrap everybody up here. So sorry. I'm trying to keep it on time.
I just wanted to say there's 9 major areas in America that we could say is under dominance. And I'm going to start out with economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war, and counter-war. Those are the 9 major areas of what we call America today. And as a black person, and with it being white supremacy, we're privileged, and white supremacy is about dominance, control, winning. So when you have the 9 most important areas that are dominated and controlled by white supremacy, it is what it is. Like Rashid said, there's a bunch of people in this room right now, not being honest. We all talk. We've had over 400 years of talk, talk, talk. It's time for the do. There's no more talking. We all know. Nobody in here is dumb, or you crazy like a fox, or dumb like a fox, as they say. But it's time for the do part. There's no more talking. Talking's over with. People are being killed, murdered, hands in the air, hands not in the air. He had this, didn't have this. What you gonna do? We can talk till everybody in here is blue in the face. But what are you going to do? And I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Scott. Can I have the panel stand up, if you don't mind? There's a few things I wanted to get to, but Go with the flow.
Run the overtime.
Can
Let's
we
go.
please give them a round of applause to Frank, Martine, Marty, Rick, Donald, and Mike? Thank you so much. Again, willing to give up your Saturday morning to be here, to have this important conversation. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Husband, I have talked to you every single day about this for the last 45 days. Today is the last day I'll talk about it. So, thank you everybody. Oh my gosh, this is quite the feat to put on. So,
Somebody get a picture of
One last thing, if you want to get involved, tomorrow, Sunday, May 21st, 4 to 10 p.m., at 32nd and Oakland Street, there's a youth prison blockade block party against youth discrimination.
Okay.
You can check that out. That's tomorrow at 32nd and Oakland if you want to participate in that.
do you want to come around front to take the picture?
I want to do a talking.
I know, I want to keep talking.
I only have you until 1.
4:15.
Thank you.
We have 45 minutes, right? I got you.
Do you need help? Please? Yes.
So
Thanks, everybody.